Sounds like a plan.
All right. So you'll even turn it down a little bit from have it on max. Want to just do a little tester speak there? Hey, what's going on?
And remember, kids,
There
no
we go.
matter what you do not play
don't
workshop.
don't fucking play that card, man. That's gonna be like that's gonna be the thing, like the motto for the fucking whole
At this point, it has to.
yeah, the whole thing. All right, so
Remember, kids,
cards
don't die.
in.
Do your taxes. Don't be like Marlinho and Blackthorn. And for the love of all that is good on this green earth, don't play workshop.
Yeah, don't
And
be
for
like
good
this.
measure, don't be like 8 Moon Protoss 8 either.
Just to call it all the people we don't like on the ladder.
Not to mention, but while we're at it, if you're still listening, kids, don't choose the name of the most famous Greco-Roman god of all time as your IGN and then misspell it. For the
Uh,
love of all that is holy, don't do that ever.
okay, okay, that's actually I still bring that up to him every now and then, and he's just like, I don't know, he kind of dismisses it, but it's like, nah, man, you did. It's like, nah, man, you did that for real. Like that's a thing that you did, and I'll never forget it.
He's never living that down.
No, never, never. As long as I live, and as long as I have a decent, head about me, and I'm not like getting Alzheimer's or something, like I'm definitely gonna
Dude, I
make
will
sure that
raise my I will ra- I will raise my son to talk about that and remember
I.
that into generations into the future. It'll be like a family heirloom of knowledge that gets passed down.
Oh, that's fucking funny.
The
All
world
right.
needs to remember and to know.
Yeah, that's oh my god, that was so fucking funny, man. I couldn't believe it. As soon as you said I should have let him just keep it for a while. That was like back when we weren't getting along. Oh, that would have been
So
fucking
you were the
funny.
one that told him?
I was the one that told him. I was like, "You fucking misspelled Zeus, eh?" And he was like, "No." He's like, "No, I didn't." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I would never." I'm like, buddy, Google it like right now." And he's like, okay." So he Googles it. He's like, "Oh my god, I spelled it in a hurry." I was like, "Yeah, okay, that's what you did." Sure, a hurry. That's why you defended
Huh.
yourself.
Well, it's like, as funny as it is to you, me being a classical literature and languages major, like that is what I lived and breathed for 4 years when I was in college.
So like misspelling something as stupid as Zeus, you're just like, what the fuck? Like, how could you even?
I mean, he's the head god. If you're gonna treat
But
put any respect on any of their names, you'd think it would be Zeus.
and you'd think you'd spell it right.
That's what I'm getting at. Like,
That's so funny. All right, so
if
today,
Juno, if he ends up dying from getting struck by a lightning bolt, we know what happened.
yeah, no, it's the gods taking their
Revenge.
their
Yeah.
vengeful wrath.
Smiting him.
All right, so today, you said you wanted to talk about like meta. I think was one of the things you mentioned, and like kind of like how to like tech according to the meta, and what
Right,
else?
which touches on deck archetypes, right? So explaining for newbies what is aggro and the different kinds, what is mid-range, what is control, what are the goals of those, and then within the meta, how do you adjust whatever deck archetype you're playing if you're running into a lot of control or a lot of really fast aggro or like a bunch of beastly mid decks or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I think mid
What
range is
can you
probably
do
the
to counteract?
hardest. It's
Right,
hardest to like
to
counteract.
define also.
Yeah, well, we're not really defined. I mean, you kind of want to win before 12. Um,
Right, but I guess what I'm getting at is when I was thinking about how I would define those three archetypes earlier,
mm,
aggro and control were easy, and then mid range is a little harder to fully articulate just because you can build it different ways and um
you can have it like leaning more towards control, more towards like an aggro
exactly
type.
because
Like,
it's in the middle, so there's a bigger range of decks that could legitimately be called mid range that would fall under that category than there are for aggro or control, I think probably, but I don't know.
yeah, no, yeah, no, absolutely. It's like when I first made like my move deck, I was like, this is like a mid range deck, and everyone was like, that's an aggro. I was like, no, it's not. was like, it's not. I promise. Trust me. Like, and like because I would trade with it and I would do other things with it that kind of made me believe that it wasn't an aggro deck. Because I mean, it had all the tools to be an aggro deck, but I didn't play it like it was an aggro deck, like face race. Like some decks I would, but that's the same thing that you do with any mid range deck. Some decks you're gonna fucking face race, like Telvanni. You're always gonna face race Telvanni. Like, you know what I
Right,
mean?
and you have to react to each game as it's happening in real time. Like it's not always going to go the same. Sometimes you draw very different than other times. Sometimes your opponent just happens to draw their top end and not put anything on the board.
Yeah,
And we've all
and
met
yeah, and I'm
those
gonna
control players that like control really efficiently and get ahead, and then they try to start hitting your face, and you're just like, what are you doing? Like you're handing me the game on a silver platter because you don't know how to play control, even though you have a control deck. Like,
yeah, no, that's rough. It's funny that you say that because like the whole just touching on the subject of like drawing differently, and it all depends on what you have. Like I would like to point out that that's not just for mid range. That's for every deck. By the way, that's for every hand you draw.
oh yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was like just on the topic of mid range that you were mentioning that, but I
Yeah,
figured
it
we
could
could.
the matchup could be anything. It could be aggro mirror, it could be aggro versus mid, it could be aggro versus control, it could be mid mirror, it could be mid versus control, it could be control mirror, and like you're not always going to play it exactly the same. Sometimes you have ring and you draw your low end, sometimes you don't have ring and you draw your top end, or any combination thereof. And it also matters what your opponent is doing and what they drew, and if people hit prophecies and if people find their card draw. I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's all these factors, right?
Yeah, I mean the main factor is like obviously what you don't want to run into is your opponent drawing like their perfect hand because like it sucks because it does happen, and there's just nothing you can really do about it,
Oh, and good,
unless you draw like a perfect answer, which
right.
happens. But like I think
Well, and again,
the best way to play those games in particular is like just play to make it to the next turn until you can see that you might be able to finish it, and then try to do that. Essentially, it's like you're basically just pulling, like holding on to it, the game, like grasping at threads. Really, is
I
what it
always
ends up
respect.
being.
That's one of the things I respected about a lot of the hardcore OG players is they would tenaciously like play out games and know exactly what possible like salvation they could find and look for it. And most of the times they still probably wouldn't find it, but I mean, the times that they did, it was always like jaw
Oh,
dropping.
oh yeah, dude. That's why most of the time, if I'm not like salty as fuck, I'll play a game out until it's fucking
Right.
until it's done. Because like if
Yep.
I got one, especially with something like mid battle mage, especially if I'm running like Telvos, it's like I'll
Oh
fucking
yeah.
stay at 1 HP for the rest of the game if it
And
means that I can
still
actually
pull it
pull
off.
this
Yeah.
fucking win out. Yeah. Because it's just it's
That
such a wicked feeling when you do it. You're like, I'm fucking unbeatable, man. This is awesome.
I probably have lost more playing burn BM to that card than like any drain or guard or like,
Tel
you know,
Telvos.
yeah, that card is amazing against burn. I mean, any card if I'm in top deck mode where I'm just hoping to find that one
Oh
card
yeah.
that will do the last bit of damage, it's useless. I mean, because he blocks it, and then if I'm not normally trading into his shield instead of going face to try to finish the game, so he's gonna keep his ward. Like, obviously, if you luck into something like ice spike into more damage, then you can
Yeah.
counteract it. But
I was playing against a guy earlier. He was playing. It was a very weird sorcerer. It actually reminded me a lot of the fucking Path Mage sorcerer that I made the other day. But he was playing. It was like Path Mage, but he also had like Telvos, and he had a bunch of doppelgangers, and he fucking doppelgangered his Telvos like fucking 3 or 4
wow,
times. Yeah, and he played that, and then basically he had a board fucking full of Telvos, and I had him at
it's a
like,
really good card. I mean,
I
it's
had him at
underrated in my
four.
opinion.
I had the guy at 4 HP, and I was like, okay, so he's got a ward up. That's fine. I was like, I had a charger in my hand. I had game in my hand for next turn, but he was like, okay, now is the time. And he fucking swung and he killed me. I was like, the fucking guy. Ah!
Can
But
you
no, it was
imagine
like,
if somehow the wards stacked like on your face if you had more than one up? That would be gnarly.
oh man, I was thinking about that the other day. Like just ward stacking in general is like such a crazy
Oh
concept
my
to think about.
goodness. But then like, a piercing jab would still punch through all of them, I imagine, or edict or
Yeah,
silence,
yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
probably
there's
for the
definitely
best.
ways around it, but then they would have to like release cards that are like, silence your opponent or something like that. You know what I mean? Because like,
Right.
you're not going to sit there. There's a guy with like 99 fuck. Because there'd be a guy that makes a deck that fucking puts 99 fucking wards on his face. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like,
I'm sure you would just if you got bored eventually at
fuck
some
yeah,
point.
dude. I make everything else like that. That would definitely be a
Right.
deck that I would
Yeah.
make.
Just to do it. Yeah. Just for the
Yeah,
sake of the sake.
yeah. Even if it loses every game, it's like it'll take you forever to kill me.
All
You
right.
probably have a
So
better chance of decking me out, actually.
right. So just to kind of start it off, like how in the words of the mighty aros.npo, how do you define the three main deck archetypes, aggro, mid-range, and control? Or do you have more than three, I suppose is a good question, but
Well, I mean, there's always combo.
combo. And then I mean I sometimes call decks mid-grow, and some people use the term mid-troll as well, I suppose we could talk about, but
Well, those are just like, yeah, okay. So like those are different
just
kinds
in
of
between, I
like
mean,
mid-range decks. Like, so for instance, if you have like a Talvon or like a Talvani mid-range deck,
yeah,
normally it would be more of like a mid-troll. I mean, you can build it mid-grow too. Don't get me wrong, but like, or like a
yeah,
Tribunal would probably be a better example as like, it's probably more of a mid-troll. Unless you're Thulder
yeah.
and you fucking like cap your curve at 6 and build a fucking weird tribunal deck that kills everybody on T4.
Hey,
um,
Tribunal, when you play it proactively, is really good because you've got like purple creatures, you've got silence and removal, and you've got wards. I
yeah,
mean, just all good stuff.
yeah,
Lightning bolts, it's
it's
great.
a scary fucking deck to be behind, especially if you're behind it like so early. You're like, fuck, this is like, okay, now I have this mountain to like surpass or surmount. Like, big ass
Well,
fucking pain in
Tribunal
the
has
ass.
so many like tools and tech options to deal with different things, like different situations you run into when you're the aggressor and you're the proactive deck, because you've got tons of removal available. You have drain and prophecies and guards if you fall behind. That you can rely on. You've got silence to deal with like, big threats or things in your way or just stuff that you don't want to stay the way it is. If your opponent's investing too much in like one creature or whatever, and it's getting huge, like
So I
um
guess the easiest way to do this would probably be to like pull up a version of aggro and kind of be like, this is an
sure.
aggro deck. So I'm gonna pull up the not this one.
I'm gonna
No,
tune
no.
into your stream so I can see your screen instead of just my
Yeah.
screen.
Probably want to turn the volume down on the stream though, just so we don't get like a
Yeah, I have
weird
my phone
echo.
yeah, at no volume. Is there a delay?
I don't think so. I don't think there is. There shouldn't be anyway. I might actually not have one readily available. I might have to actually spin one up. RQ.
Hold on a second. You don't have an aggro deck?
Not like an actual like full on, like I wouldn't call it full aggro. You know what I mean? I don't think.
Well, I mean, if you need one, I personally have plenty in
Yeah,
my
here,
collection.
just send me a fucking code real quick. I was gonna pull
Okay.
up the Firebrand Satyr, but I don't actually have it on. I must have deleted it in the shuffle of things around the top end here when I was
Let
creating
me
new stuff.
see. I'm gonna send you a warrior. Well, I don't. Is this? You could call that mid-grow, I guess. All right, let's just send you old standby faces the place.
Yeah, yeah, that's like the fucking
I don't think
quintessential.
anyone. Yeah, I don't think anyone could consider that to not be aggro, pure and simple.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you.
I mean, the highest cost is 5 magicka, and there's only 3 of those.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, this is a perfect example, and this is a deck that everybody fucking runs on the ladder anyway. So it's nice to actually talk about it too, and especially with the person that fucking made it popular. I find it interesting that
Well,
you're only running
mine.
one raider in here, but
Oh,
yeah,
I don't think that used to be the case. I used to have 2. I think there should be 51 cards because of that.
yeah, yeah. I
I don't know
definitely
if I accidentally like clicked one out and then saved the deck. I'm putting it back in there though. Yeah, there should definitely be 2.
yeah, there should be. Um,
I mean, I've
anyway,
posted the code lots of places and there's always been 2.
yeah. So this is definitely an aggro deck. Everything in the deck except for like maybe what you got Harpy that doesn't do damage, but pretty much everything like the stuff that isn't doing damage is either mitigating other aggro or it's fucking
Silence.
yeah, silence to like get past wards and or not wards, guards and other shit and deal with drain
To
so that
not
you
let
don't have
them
to.
drain, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but everything pretty
But
much has immediate damage. So like Sylvanar Tracker comes down with charge, like Orc Clan Captain gives you damage immediately. Ice Spike is damage. Like everything in
and
here
card
is
draw.
pretty much geared toward doing damage.
Now this is not a traditional old school Elder Scrolls Legends aggro deck, which is more focused on taking over the board. This is one where if everything goes your way, you can theoretically ignore the board and what your opponent's doing and just outrace them to 0 HP, um, and
Yeah.
deal with anything they put in your way from doing that
So
faster than
this
they can
is
do it.
yeah. So instead, like in terms of like aggro decks, this would be like a burn deck
That's
essentially.
how I think of burn anyways, is like,
No, that's yeah, that's true.
prioritizing summon damage directly to your opponent's face.
Well,
Um,
in Yu-Gi-Oh, for instance, there are cards that literally just deal damage. So like you fucking fill your deck with that and then play against your opponent. It's like, oh, I'll play this,
right.
and it's like, oh, now it does fucking however much damage, and you're like, this really like that's your whole deck is just full of this shit, like,
So
and they're
there's a
like,
lot more cards like Crushing Blow or Lightning Bolt that you can just literally
yeah,
target damage
I'd
straight
be,
to face or whatever.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of them in Yu-Gi-Oh. You can just abuse them and fucking play a deck
I know
full of that shit.
there's some in Magic the Gathering also,
Yeah,
like
no, you
red specifically or whatever.
yeah, but like, Magic is its own fucking thing. Like Magic is so fucking weird now. Like not
I've
now, but
only
it's
dipped
just in
I've only dipped my toes in that in those waters.
yeah, it's a shit show. Like Magic has like probably 500,000 different OTK possibilities. Like it's just
That's insane.
everything is just so busted that it's broken balanced. Essentially, is how the game is played. Like whenever
Interesting.
you're playing it, like if you're playing against your opponent, basically it's whoever draws their holy shit combination first, and then that person will win the game, like pretty much immediately.
I did not know that. I played a little bit of the arena or whatever on mobile. So I just
So
sent you
it's
like a more board-based one to compare and contrast. That's
okay.
Empire.
Ah, the Empire.
You know
I
how
like
the deck is normally called Empire of Cyrodiil?
it. Yeah,
I changed the name to be Empire of Agrodil.
Aggro Dill sounds like a really aggressive pickle.
It's basically I live there and I'm the mayor.
Okay, so yeah, another one. It caps at 5.
But this is a lot more focused on the board and the board state and taking value trades and building up an advantage on the board before you push than just going face is the place the whole time, obviously.
Yeah, so like you have like the crabs here in general, which are like a nice board-based aggro tool. Um,
Kind of a
and
wide token version, I
yeah,
suppose.
yeah. Well, I mean, if this deck plays like if you get a decent hand or like even just a semi-decent hand, you can basically throw out all your cards on like turn 3 and have the entire board filled up.
Yeah, if you have ring, it can do some stupid things. Like if you play Fifth Legion Trainer on like turn 1, if you have ring, and then you have like either three
Marked
1-drops or like
man.
a 2. Yeah, I mean, it just gets stupid really fast, especially if they can't really silence or remove Morag Tong in field or whatever, which happens to me all the time. People do that, and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like,
Yeah, they play it in field, and you're like, well, I can't contest it because it'll kill it and then just resummon itself. So
and then if you are forced into the shadow lane, that's even worse because it has cover then and can pick your creatures off at will. And then when it summons back, it has cover again. Like, it just turns into a nightmare really quick if you're not on control or something that can deal with it.
yeah, I'm usually like really fucking hoping to draw into fingers or something if I fucking play against that card. I really fucking dislike Morrigan. I don't like playing it, and I don't like playing against it. Mainly because when I've played decks like this, I like to buff my creatures, and I don't like that it loses its buff. But I mean, I get that the card is good. It's just not something I ever really liked. Although I did I did put it in a deck that I ran Unicorn in with Doomcrag
Oh, nice.
because that's just funny.
And yeah, hilarious. I respect
Doomcrag
people
with
that like I respect people that build into the whole slay thing and use more Tong because then it's like, okay, they're going for synergy. They're not just,
yeah, and then
having a pile of good stuff.
they have a fucking board full of like Morag
Oh,
Tongs, and
8
you're
of them,
like,
yeah. I
you're
can't
like
even
this,
be mad. I'm losing, but
you're
I'm
like,
not even mad about it. Like,
yeah, you're like this got out of hand really fast, but like kudos to this guy.
Yeah, my hat's off to you. You deserve this win.
Okay, so like those are basically like the two kind of types of aggro that you'll see. I can't really think if there. I don't think there's really a third kind of aggro.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, it would
Oh,
probably
there
be
is
like,
actually no, there is. There definitely is prophecy aggro, where the whole deck is literally just prophecies and then cards that target your own face in addition to your opponent's face to get more prophecies and do damage.
I guess you, yeah,
My Battle
I
Mage burn
suppose,
only has 9 or
I
10, but some
you
Battle
could
Mage
call
decks
that.
have like 40 or something dumb. Like,
Yeah, it's like 35 is like the cap for like actual good prophecies that you can run, and also having like decent cards other than prophecies like
but
silence and
then they
shit that you
put
can still
the
have.
yeah they put the other cards as like
Like a
Raging Dragon
Aeolus.
Knight or whatever, and then
Yeah,
the Cursed Elite or whatever it is. Like,
yeah, the Aelits and
those
shit.
decks
And
are hard to deal with, and when you're playing aggro, you do not want to queue into someone on Prophecy Battle Mage or something like that. You just don't.
yeah, it's a fucking
It's a
huge pain in the
nightmare.
ass. Yeah, it does. It really does suck, actually. Move decks also fucking. If you're playing a move deck and you're playing against any sort of prophecy aggro,
Yeah, I
uh,
can see
it,
that.
it's a huge pain. Like, I would go on a just as a for instance, like I could go on like a 20 game win streak with like move assassin like on a good day if I was like sitting down and like actually some of the
Focusing,
matchups
yeah.
were some of the matchups were decent, but like I didn't get any like really shitty matchups, like just hard tribunal control, which is something you don't run into on the ladder like very often at all.
No, not at
um
all.
but yeah, so it's like running into prophecy battle mage, it's like almost guaranteed loss. Like, and you pretty much you can tell by like turn like 3 because they're either they drew a decent amount of damage, and it's like, okay, like I can't really contest this with my creatures, I could definitely try to race him, and then you try to race him and fucking basically they just
Yep.
prophecy the fucking shit out of you, and you're like, oh, okay, this is stupid.
Those
It's
decks have
like,
always bothered me because it feels like they're just completely okay with sacrificing ever winning certain matchups just so that they can have like what feels to me like an unfair advantage in their other matchups. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like they're just conceding that they'll never beat like greedy control or even probably normal control very often, but they'll have
okay,
a really good chance of beating other aggro like
what I will say about that is that if you build the deck properly, it can fight against greedy control. Basically, if you build it with like the expensive prophecies like Harvester and Fate Weaver and other shit like that, and you slot in Tinkering, it becomes more of like an RNG fest. But you can definitely fight against those greedy decks.
yeah, but
Um,
that's you saying that these yahoos who run this on the ladder, they are not thinking like that on that high of a level. I promise you.
no, I
It's
know,
not most that I've ran into.
I know, and especially not with like Battle Mage. It's not a deck that you'll see that with. You see that with like
No,
sometimes Assassin. I mean, I've done it in Battle Mage, but I don't find that it's nearly as good because you don't really have the consistent life drain that you have from like Black Hand Messenger and stuff. But it's still
right.
fun, and I also ran Somerset Orrery in that deck, which is a card that you probably have never ever seen anybody play on the ladder ever. Uh, because I just had to run it. I was like, "Oh, I have to play a deck with this," and everyone says it's so bad, and yeah, it's not actually that bad. You guys have never played it, so I'm not gonna sit here and say the card's fucking amazing because it's not, but it's fucking it can do what it's supposed to do, and in certain matchups, you're like, okay, I really don't want to have to play this Dark Harvester from my hand, and I can't run Assassin Beetle because I'm in Battle Mage, so Dark
Well,
fucking Somerset Orrery, like.
that's one of the great things about Elder Scrolls Legends is there's just so many cards and there's so many overlooked gems hidden in the in your collection
Like
of cards.
Ruin Shambler. I
I
actually love,
discovered how good that was last month or whenever it was when I was trying Consume.
yeah, I fucking love Ruin Shambler. Anyway, so yeah, the prophecy aggro is a bitch. I mean, honestly, I could say we could show you a deck. Honestly, it's very easy. Just type in prophecy in the.
Right?
Here, look. I'll actually make one right now, just because that's
Would
how.
you consider Move its own subcategory of aggro since you brought it up?
I mean, if you want to kind of go into that, like, we could talk
Because you
about
also
it.
said you didn't
Sure.
have any aggro decks, but wouldn't you consider Move Assassin to be aggro?
I guess, yeah. I just
Like the
meant like
Archer version is very much usually mid, but
in terms of
the
Yeah,
The assassin, I
the
mean.
one that I have right now is I would consider it aggro, but it also runs Fingers of the Mountain, so like people would be like, "Oh, that's a fucking control card. That's weird." It also runs like Murkwater Scourge and stuff, so like I don't know. It's more of like a mid grow kind of thing, and I do kind of build up for combos and stuff. Like I run 3 Swift Strikes, and I usually finish the game by hitting 2 of them. Um,
Heck, Swift strike decks are their own almost kind of subcategory of aggressive decks.
well, I mean, it's just running more of like a comp. It's more of like a build up a
Combo
creature
aggro.
and swing twice type
OTK, yeah,
deal.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I guess you could say that it's its own subtype kind of deal. But like, it's at the end of the day,
Eh,
it's aggro in general. Like, does
right,
this?
and as one of the storied aggro players of the more modern generation of Elder Scrolls Legends, I'll add my 2 cents about like how I think about aggro. I mean, obviously, for newer people, if you hear the term aggro and don't know what it means, it's proactive, low curve, aggressive, decks that are looking to be fast, to play right off the bat, to not have to wait to put cards out there that are going to be trying to reduce your opponent's HP from 30 down to 0 before they do that to you, or before they can find their win condition or get their kind of end game win condition set up and going. And aggro decks usually, if the builder or the pilot knows what they're doing, their goal against the other archetypes, I mean, against mid, you're obviously going to try to kill them before they start putting out a bunch of like Alphic Conjurers and Belligerent Giants and Lava Atronax and stuff like that. And then against control, you're obviously looking to just really race their face and not let them put like a bunch of Altar of Despair and Necromancer's amulets up and start doing things like ice storming your whole board and gaining a bunch of health from that. And then on your one remaining creature playing Death Scythe for another like 15 health or whatever. You want to basically end them before they can do that, or set up a huge rage with like Night Talon Lord if they're on Ebonheart or whatever it might be.
Like, just to be like a pretty standard like prophecy aggro type deck.
Yeah, so it's gonna
But
look kind of like my burn, but just more prophecies and less cards that, you know.
I mean, actually, let's say we could take out like these Ravagers, for instance, and put in Afflicted Aillet. So,
Yeah, that's a pretty common staple.
well, Ailett and Initiate are like the two. Basically, that's like what you want to have in your starting hand, because Ailett comes down, it does 3 damage already, but it deals 2 damage to their face. So you play Ailett first, and then next turn you play Initiate, and you swing
Yeah,
with
you're
Ailett,
already
and
breaking a rune.
you get your fucking circle is all set up, and yeah, like, that's kind of how
My
that
favorite
goes.
opening my favorite opening for a long time with the burn was like Afflicted Elite into the Nord Raider 1 cost or whatever, that when you break a rune it starts
Yeah,
throwing knives at their face or whatever.
yeah, no, that's a
I've
good one too.
seen that I've seen that sometimes in Prof PM or whatever, but
Like, very rarely, but I'm gonna put it in this just because it's like, why not? Uh, show people that you can do whatever the fuck you want in Legends, because it doesn't really matter. I could run this on the
there's only
ladder,
there's only
probably win.
one there's only one thing that you can't do in Legends, and what is that, kids?
Well, you can, but don't fucking do it, please. Workshop,
Don't
for
play
God's sake.
Workshop.
For fuck's sakes, man, I hate that card so much.
Or
As soon
show
as
me some way that it's never been used before, and then I'll accept that. But
uh, I mean, I can think of a few, but
not you
yeah.
specifically, like anyone who wants to, play it.
Oh yeah, you won't see that on the ladder. They'll be like Titan, and it's like, yeah, fuck you.
Or as you point out, the Dwemer that gives +3/3 in guard.
Oh yeah, let's not even remind them that Dynamo combo is a thing.
Oh yeah, I
Like,
mean, what was I talking about? You
yeah, let's
heard
not.
nothing.
Yeah, let's not give them any ideas. Yeah, something I don't know. I run all my decks at 51 cards, so that's just a thing that I do. But like, you don't have to do that. Many people actually advise against it, but I don't care what they have to say because I like 51
That's actually
cards.
one thing that we have in common. I don't do it with every deck, but a lot of mine, for whatever reason, I put 51 in there. It
That's
just
fun.
feels like if you're only one over that 50 limit, it's not as bad as being more than one. I don't know.
I try to pick like
Psychology's
a
weird.
I try to pick like a really fucking like weird, obscure like card that like you'd never see and kind of fit it in like at like 51 or like something silly like Rage and like mid battle mage, for instance. Like they're just not going to see it coming and it'll win you games more often than not. And like, basically whenever you draw it, it becomes like a win condition. That's kind of what I try to
Nice.
make the 51st card, the
See, I
clutch,
do it differently.
the
I
clutch
usually
card.
will, I'll usually have more than 50 or 75 if I'm on tricolor, and then when I'm reducing it down, I always just leave it at 51 or 76
Well, same thing,
instead of
really.
taking that last card off. I know, it's weird. It's funny how our processes are a little different, like obviously because we're different people.
You don't say. So
I
mid
do
range,
say.
mid range. What would you say is like the most like fucking popular mid range? Thinking
Well,
about
for
it.
a long time before they started adding tricolor decks, it was obviously mid battle mage. I mean, that's the classic, the old school. You've got your ward boys that when their wards break, they do wonderful things for you, and different ways to kind of do that without having to wait for your opponent to do it or for a creature to crash them into the giants. But then, even when they started adding lots more expansions and card sets, mid battle mage still was preeminent
Mid.
among other mids because they added cards like Elfic Conjurer and Abner Tharn and Mighty Conjuring and
This is a
Telbo's Magister and stuff like that.
bit of a jankier version of a mid range battle mage, but yeah, essentially what this used to be my favorite deck in the entire game, because
Hence the name
it
First Love.
yeah, it just beats everything, pretty much. Like, there's not really any like inherent like there are inherently bad matchups for the deck, obviously, but it can still win those matchups. Not
Yes,
sometimes not
100%.
like dominantly, but like it can beat
It can
anything
pull
in the
out the
game.
win.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
can
you're
beat
never out of it.
anything.
On mid battle mage, you're literally never out of it. Like,
Yeah, no,
because you
like you
can,
never
I mean, you
here.
never know when the opportunity is going to be there to drop Cradle Crush and remove a whole lane, or like, you hit your prophecy even though you're only running like 5, and that just wins the game for you. Like, I swear
Yeah,
mid BM has a higher prof rate for how many it runs than any other deck. Like, I will never be unconvinced of that.
it seems like it. It's like, oh, fucking, you only got five in there, but it's like you're gonna hit a harpy. Like, don't you? If you hit all
You
my
just know
runes,
you
you're
are.
you're gonna hit a harpy or like
Yep,
bolt or something,
100%. Or
or
yeah,
bolt like at the last second with like 4 HP or something. Just
same, yeah.
stupid shit. Like, I fucking swear. Yeah,
Not
no,
only
this
that, but
use.
they always have Incano, even more than Telvanni always has Red Brahmin.
Yeah, fucking Kano on
Like
eight.
if they can get you to 5 health, it's over. You might as well concede.
Yeah, you might as well just fucking call her quits.
So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I would say mid battle mage comes to mind, but some other ones I've seen be really strong over the years. Obviously, mid tribunal with big wardy guard boys and
I
thick
think the
creatures, but also
most
having
common one that you see on the ladder nowadays is probably mid Dagoth or mid. Which
yes,
one?
mid Dagoth classic. Dagoth really lends itself to the mid range playstyle. Um, as far as um, where's my train of thought going? I just had a thought. Oh, yeah, tournaments. So we've talked about tournaments a little bit before, but you see a lot of mid-range decks people bring to tournaments, which I think is
Primarily,
interesting, especially
primarily mid range.
when I was like new to the tournament scene. I didn't understand why. I feel like I have a better understanding of it now, but I think part of it, I'll let you answer this same question, why you think that is, but I think part of it is that when you take out some of the outlier toxic kind of stuff, which tournaments usually will ban, it gives mid-range decks a really good chance to shine. And the whole point of the term mid-range is that it's in the middle. It can go either way, and it can have a really not like overpoweringly great matchup against everything, but it has a decent matchup against everything. So it allows good players to have the flexibility matchup wise. Like if you bring hyper aggro or like greedy control, you're limiting your matchups because you'll have a much higher chance of losing to certain things if you bring decks that are at one extreme end of the spectrum of the different kind of deck archetypes. But mid-range being right in the middle, it's very flexible, and in the hands of a good player, it allows you the best overall chance to win, I would say, in a tournament setting.
Yeah, like in a for instance, a deck like this one, you don't want to fucking run into a deck like this one in a tournament.
No, that's gonna get banned.
Like Piercing
If I
Twilights,
see that on your deck list, I'm banning it. Like,
Ascended Sleeper, fucking it's got shit like Fighters Guild Steward. So basically it's like Squish in Dagoth, which is
I
wicked. This
literally
is
don't have to see anything other than Unstoppable Rage to know I don't want to face it. Like,
yeah, so pretty much Rage in general is a fun tool I like to throw into like most of my mid range decks. I even if the deck doesn't necessarily call for it, if it has a couple of breakthrough creatures at the top, like usually if I'm running red,
yeah,
then you know you got like belligerent giant. Then yeah, okay, throw in obviously red for rage. But yeah, I'll throw in like a rage or something. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be like the key point of the deck. Like some decks will run rage
such a
and
strong card. I mean,
they're running three rages and like all of their top end is like vigilant giant, like that kind of shit. Like no, like this the
it's
quintessential like
unnecessary.
standard like fucking staple top end of three belly G and whatever else is good enough for me to be like, yeah, I think I can fit a rage in here somewhere. Like I even have a move deck here. I'll actually show you. I have a
Well,
move
hold
deck
on.
off.
Before you go off that page real quick, I just wanted to point out the curve. How it's obviously
Oh yeah,
most of
sure.
us would just assume that we intrinsically know, but if you look at the curve, it's definitely different than an aggro deck. You're gonna see more of like, I don't know if it's called a bell cow or whatever, but like it's gonna start off the same where you have a lot of twos and then a little bit less threes, but then once you get to the other end, it starts to go back up again, and you're gonna have some more top end stuff than like in aggro. So it's like an inverted in the middle, and it goes up kind of at both ends.
I can
So
fucking
usually mid-range decks will have a curve more like that, or just straight across the board, like some of every cost, roughly the same amount of them. You see that in mid-battle mage sometimes.
let me find the fucking deck first. Good lord, I actually lost it. Where the fuck did I fucking? Where I just pulled it out of nowhere. Like, oh, you don't want to run into this, and then just yeah, can't find it.
I'm gonna send you this mid-range Guildsworn. The curve
Oh,
looks
here it is.
almost exactly like your Dagoth, and this is one I bring to tournaments literally as ban bait because I know people are not gonna want to play against it, because that's another really good mid-range deck is Guildsworn. Um, I literally named this deck Tournament Ban Bait.
Okay.
Because I don't particularly like the deck, and I'm not particularly confident piloting it, but it's such a strong deck in so many other people's hands that when people look at my deck list, they're like, yeah, I don't want to play that.
I don't want to
And
fucking
you'll
play
see why
against that.
when you see it. I mean, like, it's just the stereotypical,
Yeah,
mid-range Guildsworn.
that's how I curve my fucking mid guild sworns actually. So yeah,
I mean, the curve looks, if I'm recalling, it looks just like your Dagoth too.
pretty much yeah.
And again, that's kind of typical, something like that, something close to that for most mid-range decks that you're going to see. I mean, when you look at that, is that something you want to face in a tournament? Like,
I mean, I'd rather fight it. I think I would be okay with this because it doesn't have Mirac and fucking
I,
yeah. I
I
mean,
I consider Mirac to be more of a mid-troll control kind of card. Usually, I know some people might differ from me, but
yeah, definitely. It's the
because
mid
like
fucking
mid-range, you
troll
still want to have
versions.
tempo and you still want to be proactive. You're not like going to be reacting to
Well,
everything the other
you
player's doing
remember
necessarily.
you remember Aura. Aura used to run a fucking really
Yeah,
wicked
before he
mid.
changed his name or whatever.
Yeah, he used to run a really wicked mid Guildsworn, but it was like a mid troll version that ran like fucking Odaving and Mirac
Oh
and
yeah,
fucking
he definitely beat me a few times with that, if I
that.
recall.
Yeah, that deck is fucking wicked good, man. It's super good. I could play it
Have you
even
have you
now.
played
I could
against
play it.
a Kizzle's Guildsworn or whatever?
Oh yeah, I've played
He
against.
seems
He's
to
got like
always have. He's very defensive. He seems to always have my number because I'm usually on something aggro-ish. But
yeah, yeah, fucking. He's good, man. He is good. I like playing against
he
Seikos. He's a
doesn't get as much
nice
credit
fella.
as he deserves. I feel like just with all the other players we have. But
Oh, I tried to recruit him at the very beginning before, like he was like kind of on the fence of like who he wanted to join, but I think
Yeah,
Death Row just sunk his fucking hooks into him a little too deep.
he did. I love Death Row too. Really
Yeah,
nice
definitely.
guy.
Cedric, man, nice fucking fellow. So
See,
something
you
I would
can't
like.
believe everything you hear about those AZZ fellas. There's some good ones.
Well, the only two people that there's three people that you
We
have
know
that
who they are.
gives you guys a horrible reputation. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, something that you wanted to talk about a while ago was the number of actions that you have in here, and I think that for a mid-range deck, like an actual uh,
Is that a bit
what the-
much as far
no,
as
actually,
number of actions?
no, I was gonna say the maximum I would go to is like 25.
Okay, so
Um,
right in that range.
Yeah. So anywhere from like 16 to 25 is fine. 16 obviously more of like a board-based aggro type deal with like less tricks, I would say.
Yeah, you're going to be
Um,
trying to dictating to the other person what's happening instead of like just having flexibility in case they do that to you.
yeah, there's probably a good example if I want to check out if I want to go on Discord and grab one of Fluffy's decks that he gave to Warlock there. But he
Ooh,
actually, yeah, I will do that because he has a couple of mid-range decks where he only runs like 10 actions. And it's like, okay, so he's definitely on like a more of a board based aggro type deal. And not
right.
only is he more of like a board
But there
based, but it's like
is,
he's probably trying to beat me pretty quick with this deck. So
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, so the idea with mid-range, right, is that you're going to win the middle part of the game. So not 12 Magicka, not one, but in that middle part, you're going to be throwing down better creatures than them just straight up because their deck isn't based around, creatures like Alphic Conjurer summoning like a Storm Atro and you're setting up your deck that way, or like, I
So
don't know what are
actually
some other.
this is actually a good time to talk about what the difference is between a mid range deck and a tempo deck, because it's actually this is a tempo deck that I'm going to show you, but
Okay.
it mid range and tempo are very hand in hand. You can call one the other and the other one the same thing. It's the same fucking thing. Tempo is mid range and mid range is tempo. It's just tempo is played a little differently, even though the decks look very similar. And
Well,
the
and the terms
main
can get confusing because you want tempo no matter what you're on if you can,
yes, but
if you can have it. Like,
a deck like this like relies on it. So for instance, like
right,
when I was
right.
talking about Fluffy being a hard person to play against because he always puts a card down, and he always plays a card. He's almost
Yeah,
always
he's
tempo.
always on curve, right? He's literally always on curve.
Yeah, so he's always playing tempo. Basically, most of his decks that he makes are tempo decks, and it's a deck like this where everything, basically it's nothing fucking super fancy or super crazy, but you know, it
Ooh,
has
the Ebonheart.
it has like okay. First of all, this deck has a lot of silence, so it's running three
I think
mutes, three corpus
did he bring
disease.
this to the did he bring this to the tournament?
I would say probably it's one of his best decks.
If it is, then he definitely obliterated my
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
one of my decks when it that's one of the matches he
This
won was when.
this is a fucking asshole deck to fight against. Three Swift Strike. The only thing I'm surprised that he doesn't have in here is like I'm surprised he doesn't have a rage at the top end, especially since he's running the skirmishers elixir here. Like I could definitely see him putting a rage here at the top end.
Yeah, it doesn't synergize with Garnog obviously, but I mean that's just one card. And
First of all, I
he's not
run
running
Garnag in every
oh no,
deck that I run.
he's
Like,
running Withered Hand Cultist
yeah,
also, which
that that's the
doesn't
only thing.
synergize with actions, but yeah.
So just real quick, just shut up for a second, please. The whole
Of course.
concept of Garnag not being a thing to put in rage decks is a fucking really outdated thing to think. Um, it sounds like it's a bad idea because Garnag, blah, 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 and I get that. Like, yeah, sure. But I mean, if you put Garnag in the deck, that doesn't mean you can't curve your creatures to go above fucking 7. You can
Of
put
course.
Garnag in mid battle mage, and mid battle mage usually, if I'm running it, I like to go up to Hercene, so for 9, right? But just in general, Garnag is a card to play when you're ahead and you don't want to lose your lead. Like it's obviously it's fantastic against greedy decks that are gonna fucking like pile on the
Ramp a
mana.
lot.
So like Scout or
Yeah.
Talvani or whatever, like it's really really good for those decks, and it'll fucking literally stop them in their tracks, and it'll win you games. Like
Yep.
don't get me wrong, Garnag is hands down,
100%.
in my opinion, the best card in the game. Like there's no card that when it comes down just wins games more often than fucking Garnag, and
It's my favorite
especially
card in the game.
when it's paired with Withered Hand Cultist, it's just such a
Oh man, it's
fuck
beautiful.
off, fuck off combo. But yeah, so Garnag can, if you're running Garnag, you can run cards like fuck man. I've put Garnag in decks where I go up to like Odavig and shit. It it's just a card that you play when you want to be ahead. And when you're ahead and you want to win. Like I actually put Garnag in a deck. It was like a Wismother control Guildsworn that I made with fucking Nacrin. So hey, fuck, actually, there's a picture. I have a screenshot of me versus Death Row where I drew Mirak with Nacrin, and then I played Mirak the next turn with fucking
Nice.
Wismother on board, and then I played Garnag.
That's
So
brutal.
it was so fucking brutal. I was like, oh my god. I was like, bro, I'm so sorry that I just did this to you.
You felt guilty after that one.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, oh man. He's like, don't fucking worry about it. He's like, that's fucking nasty though. Like, good lord. It's like, yeah, that's probably not gonna happen again to you for a long time. So hopefully this it makes you have better ladder luck in the future today. You know, but yeah, no,
I would
fucking
certainly never tell someone to not run Garnog. It's my favorite card in the game, and like we're all a little biased, right? So as primarily an aggro player, like I, in my biased mind, think that like control has an inherent advantage against aggro, just with prophecies, with drain, with guard, with
disagree.
cards like Ice Storm and stuff. Well, it's a bias, right? It's my bias. It's not like a fact. It's not a claim. It's just my inherent bias as an aggro player. And so when I see a card like Garnog or a card like Witherand Cultist, but especially Garnog, and like you said, it's just such a big middle finger to like what these greedy control ramp magicka decks that are designed to be an unbeatable system once they get going. It just like you said, I couldn't say it any better. It completely halts it in its tracks and tells you, not today, sir. You're not getting away with it this time. And it's just a beautiful thing. So yeah, play Garnag. Don't play Workshop, play Garnag.
Yeah.
That could be our catchphrase right there.
Yeah, Garnag, not Workshop. So basically just talking about the whole like what you said there, like the whole control decks are kind of like more favored. The game is geared toward aggro, and that's just a fact. It started off as a mobile game, so it's basically the decks that have the most success on the ladder, just in general, are decks that are gonna get the game done quicker. They don't have to find some high cost card and also have the mana in order to play it. Like basically every turn that leads up to that leads up to some stupid fuck off combo like I don't know Alien Guardian and
Right.
Devase Experiments, just as a for instance. Like that's a
Sure.
turn 12 at the latest kind of combo type deal. You know what I mean? Or at the earliest rather. In order to get to turn 12, like I'm not going to say it's the hardest fucking thing in the world, but versus some aggro decks, it really is difficult. But I'm not gonna listen to you guys out here. They're like, "Oh, Alduin reanimate is fair because I have to make it to turn fucking 9." Like, no, fuck off. That's a stupid fucking combo. Don't run that shit either.
Yeah,
But
don't run that, please.
but basically, like, I don't know. Like, you don't have to fucking play the game the way that I play the game or the way that Shadow plays the game or whatever. But these are combos that I just generally think like they really take away from the creativity of you as a fucking player, and just the game in general becomes a bunch of fucking like, okay, like now I'm just gonna get this stupid fuck off combo and win. I mean, you could argue the same thing about Nexox, I guess, but the deck is
No,
not
I won't
the
let
deck.
anyone argue that.
The deck is not the same. It just in general it isn't.
You don't get to have that argument until you've actually pulled off the combo yourself, which is like a handful of people that still play the game, maybe.
It's fucking impossible. It's fucking
That's
impossible.
what I'm saying. So yeah,
I remember trying to fucking learn it, and it was like I lost so many games just in the middle of a combo, being like, oh, I fucked
why do you think why do you think I haven't started trying to learn it yet?
up. When you do learn it though, it's the best. I still need to make a
I'm
video on
sure
like
it
the whole
is.
how tos and like kind of stuff like that. But like I am gonna make a Nexox video here very shortly.
I
It's
wanted
in
to
the list of
say
things to do.
right quick that like I kind of agree with what you were saying, but there is a difference between a deck being successful because you can get more games in and like that being a successful strategy to like like to rank up on the ladder like faster, I guess. Like
Well,
for instance,
the fastest
at
deck that
the beginning of the month, like everyone's on their burn assassin, right? Because they want to hit legend and get a high legend rank or whatever. And so you can get more games in faster if you're not playing control, obviously. But I think that's not the same thing as like a deck being effective with its win rate per se, which the fastest way to legend is always going to be to win 100% of your games no matter what. Like,
I was gonna say the
and so
fastest way to rank up is to win your games.
yeah,
And that's
100%. And
what
if you're
just
better with control or mid and that gives you a better win rate, then do that. Who cares if other
touching
people
on
think aggro is
the
faster to legend or whatever?
touching on the whole first day thing. By the way, it's not burn assassin. It's fucking goblin scout. Sorry, not sorry. That's the fucking way it is. Goblin
Really?
scout on the first day. Absolutely, man. Especially the guys that climb the quickest, they're always on fucking scout goblins, and I hate
I
all.
don't
I
always
hate
play on the first day, so
every single one of them.
I'll have to defer to you on that because I don't always play on the first day of the season. But like, usually because I've been trying on the day before, and so you get that little break or whatever. But I've noticed in the first few days that I see a lot of like prophecy, battle mage
Yeah,
aggro, a
yeah.
lot
It's
of burn
def-
assassin.
definitely more geared towards like burn and aggro type deal for like the first like I'd say week and a half of the new season.
Man, I do not miss seeing all that goblin scout that you see on day one. I'll tell you,
And no, it's a pain in the ass. Especially since whenever
such
the
an
new season
efficient
rolls
good
over,
deck.
I'm always like, yeah, like, oh. I always have this like whimsy about me, like I'll make something stupid like a funny like assassin like mid range like OTK Namira ring combo deck or something stupid like that. And I'll like, yeah, let's ladder with this, and then I'll ladder with it. Like I'll win like
And then everyone says, "Nope,
maybe
you
my
don't get to
first
have fun."
I might win like my first two games, and then it's like you run into like the meta whore that's running fucking like goblins or whatever, and you just get absolutely eviscerated, and there's nothing you can fucking do about it, but literally sit there and watch as like he efficiently picks off your creatures and swings for game, and you're just like, yeah, this is fucking stupid.
This is not fun. I
why do
tried
I
to,
even
yeah,
why do I even play this fucking game? Like like why do I try to do cool stuff? Like goblins are always gonna
yeah.
fucking be there anyway. Like what I mean? It's just so it's always like
There
that.
was there was a time where like that was the general consensus among like most of the people I was friends with in the game is that like, oh, when it's a new season, you make new decks and try out new fun things, and then, once you get like the halfway mark, you start putting on the big boy, try hard pants, and then actually going for your climb up the ladder. But I don't think nowadays a lot of people look at it that way per se.
Well, I think that the big thing is like once you make it to legend, that's the time to fuck around. So I'll like on the
That's
first
fair.
day, I used to back when I was running two accounts, like actually running two accounts, I would get them both to legend on day one, and then I'd just say fucking cool. Now I'll play memes for the rest of the month and literally just fucking meme it up. And maybe during the last like week or so, I'll like kind of try to push for top spot or whatever. But like now I've
Sure.
realized that it really doesn't matter when you want to push, as long as you're pushing like say 48 hours, I'd say before the end of the season. Is like if you really want to actually get a top spot on the ladder, guys, like you can be as fucking high as 500 or whatever. It doesn't matter where you are. You can get a top 100. You can get a top 10 spot if you actually win most of your games and play a good deck that you're going to win with, that you're good with. Like there was a couple seasons ago, I kind of had a bit of a fucking mental episode, and I was like, fucking none of my decks are working, and I just deleted everything, and I said, fuck it. And the last like I took 2 days off, and I came back on the last day with like fucking 12 hours left, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this. Basically, it's similar to the Crab Guild Sworn that you shared the other day, but I made my own version, obviously, and it basically took me from 420 all the way to like 16 in like that stupid like short window of time. And
That is actually insane.
it's ridiculous, right? But it's like that's kind of like like, proving to myself and to whoever else I guess that wants to talk shit. It's
Mostly
like
yourself.
I can do it if I fucking want to. Like, and it's
Yeah.
basically just having to want to and having to sit down and actually like put in the grind. Basically, is kind of what it is. Because
Yeah,
like
it's
I do get bored of playing the same deck over and over and over. It is a bit of a fucking chore sometimes to do something like that. But I also wanted to be like, yeah, I can fucking do this. And that was even with like an hour or so of messing around with Nexox and around at like rank 30s and stuff.
that's
Like
really impressive.
Yeah, it was fucking. I was actually I was happy with myself. I was like, you know what? I didn't get top 10 this season, but I don't even fucking care. 'Cause, like, I literally started my climb at like 420. So
Well, and like a lot of people that play in the high legend ranks know that for whatever reason, something's in the water, but the last day of the season, people just they do not mess around. It's kind of like the Grand Melee almost. Like people are showing
everybody's
up
on their
with
good. Everybody's on their good
their
deck.
work pail and their lunch box and their hard hat, and they are not there to mess around. Like you
Yeah.
better come prepared. Like
Yeah, it's the last day of the season. Always, always, always is a fucking bitch, man. Always. It's always the hardest day to climb, and But that's
without a
the
doubt.
those are the days. Like, oh, fucking, I love the last day, man, because like the last day is like, okay, now I have an excuse to play my good decks, and I'm not just playing them
You don't need an
all.
excuse to play good decks.
Yeah, I don't like playing them all the time though. It's like fucking, especially where I stream. So it's like you play your good deck all the time. It's
Right,
like
right,
it
right, right.
fucking it's like basically if I was doing that, I'd be like Einie, right? Nothing against Einie. Einie's a great player. Watching his streams is a different. You watch Einie's streams for different reasons than you'd
Then
watch
they
one of.
watch yours. That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's just a different audience. I try to appeal to different people. I try to do different things, and you know, more fun. I
No,
guess is
I totally get
kind
it.
of. But yeah, running efficient decks all the time. It's a little boring
I
to
have
watch.
I have only had success on the last day of a season one time that I remember, and it was the month that I finished number one, where I had to try to catch Pat Saras, who apparently was like as far ahead of me as you can be of someone, and I still can't believe that I even bothered trying to like have a really high win rate on the last day, but I had to win 22 games in a row in order to move from number two to number one.
Yeah,
Um, which I can't even normally do that on a day that's not the last day of the month. Like I still find it hard to believe that I was able to do that. Like, and that's what it even took to pass him. Like it should not. That's wild. He had a huge lead. He was playing that crazy good, his version of mid BM, and he got just way ahead of everybody that month. But
his
like,
his version of mid BM changed how everybody else played mid battle mage.
oh yeah,
Like
100%. It made it a
like
lot more blue, right, instead of red, if I
well,
recall,
basically it was like
among
he
other
ran
things.
he didn't
Moose
run
and stuff like Wiles Incarnate.
yeah, he didn't run like Cradle Crush or any like he ran one of Cradle Crush, like which is weird because I was like, oh, three Cradle Crushes all day, like that's like just fucking
That's what it
standard
used to
mid
be,
battle
yeah,
mage
for a
thing to
long
do.
time. Yep.
Yeah, no, like no, fucking I missed Pat because he was a nice guy, a little more stoic than most, but yeah, he
Oh,
was
I
a great
respect you,
play.
the dude.
He was always a great player, always somebody that you'd fucking fight on. You find them on the ladder, you're like, this is gonna be a fucking game. Like
Dude, yeah, you
somebody,
had to. Oh my goodness, I've
somebody
some of my hardest
similar
matches ever against that dude.
somebody similar nowadays for those of you who are still up around the top of the ladder and stuff like that. Shout out to Mighty Blacksmith, actually.
I matched
Very
him today.
very good player.
Guildsworn, right?
Always playing something a little different. Well, last time I played him, he was on Archer. Um,
Okay.
but it doesn't matter what the guy's playing. You can always count on it being a good game because he's a good player. And he's same with Pat. But Pat was like for a while he was on Monk, and then he was on Mid Battle Mage, and then he was on Mid Battle Mage for like fucking like months. And I think he finished number
That
one
guy
like
grinded, man.
3 or 4 months in a row. I think, and I was just like
Yeah, that guy grinded. And it would have been another month if not for me.
he had no premiums in his deck or anything. He wasn't really worried about the flashiness. He's just like, yeah, I'm playing here, playing for fun, playing for free, and yeah, you guys can,
Let's do this.
yeah, play me, and if you want to win, then come and beat me. But if you're not playing to
Good
win, then
luck.
yeah, fucking, this is going to be a very one-sided game.
He was one
And
of the few people that I've seen continue to play once they hit number one and like try to get a lead, like instead of just kind
yeah,
of.
he's kind of the reason like why if I do get one, it's like I like to sink in a couple of wins. I don't like to go crazy, but like he would sit there and fucking play 25 games at one with
Yeah, because most
like a
people.
maniac.
Yeah, most people are like, okay, I'm gonna make someone else have to pass me and take the risk of dropping out of the top 10 and stuff because you
Yeah,
lose so much ELO and you're not really gaining very much when you're getting wins at number one. But he could just
yeah,
stack wins like that. His deck was that good. Like,
yeah. It's just funny
so we
too
talked
because
about
like
aggro
if
and
I
mid
actually
now.
pulled up the old Pat Zaris mid BM, like it looks fucking weird. But
You
it's
still have
he
it?
fucking I could probably find it.
I certainly don't on this account.
It's on the NPO Discord. I guarantee I could find it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's there somewhere.
I'll find it later. Anyway, so yeah, talking about control now.
Control,
Uh,
my very favorite archetype.
Telvanni is a
I can't
good
I can't keep a straight face with that.
Telvanni is a good example just because
It is.
Telvanni is the most common control deck you're going to run into on the ladder,
It's also
and
one of the very strongest decks of all time.
yeah, I would say it has the best late game out of all the decks, except for like
I'm
maybe Ebenheart has its number, but in general, Telvanni beats more decks in the late game than Ebenheart does. I think.
I know this is going to come as a shock to you, Eros, Mr. Andy,
What?
but I don't have a control Telvanni deck to send to you to look at.
That is okay. I have a couple myself.
I hope
Um,
you aren't having a heart attack after finding that out.
I'm not surprised. So one that I actually have that's definitely it's not your standard uh Telvanni control, I guess.
Good.
It also
I
runs
hate the standard
it
Telvanni control.
runs it's I don't know, it's something stupid like 81 cards. I've been meaning to cut cards, but let's not worry about the amount of cards it has. Normally I don't actually run Necromancer's Amulet in this deck, but I had to bite the bullet and be like, fuck it, I'll finally put it in. But I normally don't like running Necromancer's Amulet at all. I find it to be a bit of a bit of a cheap card in a lot of cases, just
Well, the
because it's a
thing
very
is,
late. It's just
you don't even need that to win with Telvanni control. Like
it's just a lazy win condition in my opinion, because your
it's
creatures and
attrition, right?
shit are
Just straight up, you're gonna win the war of attrition over time. Like the
your
longer the game
cards
goes,
your cards are gonna die. Yeah. Anyway, you're gonna gain life. It's just the way it is. But yeah, so this is like a more control version of Telvanni. Basically, it's a Namira's Ring combo, but I built the deck around Spider Daedra and funny combos with Dawn Fang and Namira's Ring and shit like that.
definitely not a typical control
Yeah,
Telvanni, but
but
I
it
dig
also
it.
has other like alternative win conditions like Supreme Atromancer and Gearwork Spider and other shit.
Sure.
And the Cruel Fire Blooms and the Death Scythes really shined in here because you have Spider Daedra on the field, you kill it off, then you're automatically gaining like 8 or 9
All
damage
those
with
creatures, yeah.
the Death Scythe, right? For instance, just to
Yep.
throw a thing out there, Dromathra Reaper gets doubled by Wisp Mother if you're playing Wisp Mother, which is also a really great card for your Gearwork Spiders. Like, there's a lot of synergy in this deck that is really fun. The only thing I actually am missing in here that I have run in it in the past is Nixox. Sometimes I put it at the top, and perhaps if I was thinking about being a more Wisp Mother oriented deck, I would probably put in like Thieves Guild Fence or something like that.
Well, I'm glad you're kind of showing this version because it raises the point that like there actually most people don't know this or will be surprised to hear me say this, but there is a lot of different ways you can build not just Telvanni in general, but Telvanni control even. But the reason most people aren't going to really like know that is because most people on ladder run just the cookie cutter stereotype one that's really strong. It's insanely efficient, which is one of its strengths, if
I
not its
actually
main strength, I think.
couldn't even pull up a deck like that because I've never had an alter
Well,
control
anyone that's been
Telvanni.
playing this game, anyone that's been playing this game for more than a little bit of time has had unspeakable horrors done to them that would be illegal in all 50 of the United States, where things with Parthenax, things with Ayleid Guardians, things with Alduin being summoned from beyond the grave. I mean, unspeakable horrors that have happened to all of us that we're all victims of from this deck archetype.
Yeah, it's
Not
like
even archetype, just this particular deck. Like,
it's like a Me Too movement, but we're talking about Telvanni control.
seriously, we need to have therapy groups or something. Hi, I'm Shadow. Hi, Shadow. And I'm here to talk about my experiences and where Talbani touched me on the little bear or whatever.
On the fucking doll.
Exactly.
So yeah, this is I don't know. This is a deck that you won't see anybody else run probably on the ladder. It's just a funny version of Telvanni control. It's my fun Telvanni control. I call it Spooder Vani because it's a spider Telvanni deck that oddly enough doesn't run Sanctuary Sanctuary Pet. But yeah, no, it's like I said, it needs cuts and it's a little funny, but I don't know. It wins more often than you would think, and the wins that you get are very satisfying because you have to try really fucking hard to win with this deck. um, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about it. but this is like the more control kind of curve that you'll see. It's just kind of funny. It looks a little bit like the mid-range curve, but if you'll notice here, it peaks at 3. Um, kind of what we were talking about the other day. Most decks will peak at 2. Uh, if they're like mid-range or aggro, definitely
Aggro, yeah.
they'll peak at 2. But yeah, control usually more in the later games. You'll see like it'll peak at like 3. Some of them like
Unless they're
probably
greedy, and then it's
like
gonna be like
probably
7 plus or whatever.
probably Ebenhart would peak at like fucking 7 plus, or like 4 would be a
Yeah,
probable
something
one
like that.
uh, for Ebenhart, just where they have so many fucking strong 4s, like fucking Blackwood Distiller and Archean Venom Tongue and fucking
I don't know
Camel.
if you remember when Telvanni Control, or just Telvanni in general, first came out. The version you saw most actually was like the conscription version. Um, everyone
Yeah,
was
but
running
now
conscription
now
Telvanni.
they I honestly think that every Telvanni deck that you run into at the higher rankings does have conscription. Like
Yeah, but it's different because the reason they're running that has changed, I feel like. Like
they're
there's
running it
different
for
reasons you
Flesh
can run it, right?
Atronach, they're running it for Flesh Atro, or they're running it for fucking Namira Ring, or they're running it just because, yeah, like to Journey or fucking
Right. Whereas before
but they
it
usually
was only one
spam
of it was only one
Balmora
of
Spymaster. I fucking need to talk about this. Balmora Spymaster is another fucking card I hate, because if you're running it and you're running into it, doesn't matter who you are. You're playing Balmora Spymaster. You're fucking
You can
just
call me
doing,
Sep.
yeah, that fucking guy. Anyway, doesn't
I've
matter.
messed him a bunch of times recently.
Not here to call people out, but I'm just here to say, like, Balmora Spymaster is another no honor card. Like, if you're playing the game and you want to have fun, I get it. That's fine. Everybody plays the game differently. But
But you'll
Balmora
never find either of
Spymaster
us promoting that card.
really fucking grinds my gears, because people will literally sit there and rebirth it and resummon it and re-fucking play the card until they get something good, which happens more often than not. Like,
Way more often than
it's
not.
not as random as it fucking claims to be. Like, because it's how the card works is it rolls a value and then it rolls a fucking card. It doesn't roll um, out of a full random pool of creatures like you would think. Like, Wabbajack is random. As random comes, Wabbajack is random. But Balmora
I agree.
Spymaster is not
Not
random.
random. Not at all.
it,
There's no way, dude.
it's random to an extent, but it's not random to the degree that it should be, and that's why I don't like the card. Just putting that out there. I hate facing it. I hate seeing it on the ladder. I hate, because if I see it, I know they're going to rebirth it like 100 times. So it's like, oh, I hope I teched my Twilight today.
All I know is that like when people were playing conscription back when there was a lot of OG really high level players playing Telvanni Control, they would use conscription as like their draw engine, right? I mean, all their little creatures they would summon would like draw them cards one way or another, either on after they died with, um the effect where it does something for you when it dies, or once you sacrifice it, or just drawing on summon, whatever. Whereas now it's kind of like to feed the loop of gaining health, um, or setting up things like Ice Storm into Death Scythe or whatever. I don't know if you've noticed that trend over time, but
What was that? Sorry. There was just somebody that asked a question in the chat there. They were saying, "Who did
oh,
you
no
can call me?
worries.
Who did you can call me? Sep used to be. He's an ass guy. Talked shit and then ghosted a game when he realized he lost, but didn't quit. He just disconnected." It's like, yeah, that
Well, if
sounds that
if
sounds
he's
like,
an ass, it's only because you are what you eat, right? I mean,
well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like
never mind.
eating ass is like a pretty common thing now. I think so.
I know. I used to make that joke back in the day, but it doesn't hit the same anymore. Anyways, I was saying that I don't know if you noticed the same trend, but like when Telvanni Control first became prominent with a lot of like high level players, they were using conscription as like a draw engine. So all the little creatures would draw them cards either on summon or when they sacrificed them or when they died with last gasp. But now it seems to me like conscription, if they're running it, is to give them a
Balmora
bunch of health.
Spymaster.
That and also just gaining a bunch of health with their Necro Amulet up, and also setting up things like Ice Storm into Death Scythe, where a ton of creatures die on both sides of the
Or
lane or
like,
whatever.
usually it's like this. the wider picture of that is to play Namira or Flush Etro for OTK. And I think the best person to actually ask about this, if they were online, um, would probably be Alex Jr. If he was online, I'd probably ask him about it because he's probably, I think now that Demon isn't playing anymore, I think he is the
I was
best.
gonna bring him up. I'm glad you did.
I think he is. I think he is the best Telvanni player on the ladder when he plays Telvanni. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of people that when they play Telvanni, you're like, okay, this is going to be a fucking match. Maker 83 is another one. If you run into Maker 83
Yeah,
on fucking Telvanni,
Demon
he's like,
really was a demon with his, I swear.
but Demon, like his was also special though, because it was you could if you asked him to see the deck, he'd show it to you, and it was very efficient. It wasn't running the fucking stupid shit like Gentleman Jim or whatever. It
I
wasn't
agree,
running.
yeah.
It wasn't running Alien Guardian. Like he
Yep.
wasn't running dumb shit. Like and
But he was so good with it, bro.
yeah, no, he was very efficient, and basically his whole motto was like, once I play Conscription, it's game over,
That
and
game set
pretty much
match.
pretty much he was the reason I actually fucking started teching in Rage in my mid battle mage, because
Well,
I
yeah, that's
fuck
one of the classic answers, right? And I'm glad you brought that up because that brings up kind of the inter-archetypal, matchups and how to play them, right? So one of the answers, if you're facing a lot of Telvanni on a given day or a given week or month on ladder, and you're noticing that's a big part of the current meta, one of the ways to respond to that is to run a mid-range deck like a Guildsworn or something that has Rage. So when they pull off their conscription and fill the lanes with creatures, if you anticipated it and you have something ready to slap on the zero cost breakthrough item and then play Rage or whatever, that's a really good answer to that. Another one is the yellow card, the 6/7 dude that makes the whole lane turn into like Mania or whatever, because that can be hard for a Telvanni
fade
to,
fade on.
yeah, to play against.
Yeah, until they
Oh
drop
no,
card.
Duke whatever,
Fade on.
um, Phaedon, yeah.
Yeah, but
For
yeah,
some reason, I heard you saying that weird, but
it's all
now I
fun in
don't.
games until they fucking play Alien Guardian and bully you out of the lane.
Yeah, but I mean, a deck like Guildsworn is going to have either a Javelin or like a Belly G or something probably ready and waiting in the wings if they've been drawing the extra cards, especially.
Go ahead, Belly G their fucking Alien Guardian. See if they care. Better be winning that turn.
Well, if you have Rage and they're going to use all that Magicka to play it again, then you've set up a Rage because they're probably going to have some other creatures in that lane. Like, I don't know.
in
It's a hard
terms of
matchup,
in terms
obviously,
of
but
decks, basically Telvanni is a bitch. I will say that, but
it's tough, man.
Telvanni, if you play it, which I recommend everybody plays a fucking their own version of Telvanni at least once or
I
twice
have
or
a
whatever.
mid-grow one.
But yeah, play your own version of Telvanni. Play the deck, see how it works. That's how I feel about most decks. Play it, fucking find out how it works, and
Make it
then
your
you
own.
find out what the bad matchups for it are, because you'll see very quickly that Telvanni checks under its bed for fucking Dagoth and Guildsworn. Pretty much like, yeah,
And
it can
sometimes
beat
mid-BM too.
both of them. Uh, it can beat mid BM. It can beat Telvanni is like mid battle mage in the way that it can
Oh, it
beat
can win
all
any
of these.
matchup. I
It
mean,
can
yeah,
beat
it's
all of these decks, but it has a harder time against decks like that, and especially a deck like Ebenheart Rage. Just hands down is like it's almost a no contest really for Telvanni. Like it feels bad playing Telvanni against mid or a fucking Ebenheart Rage because they're more efficient at ramping. Uh, they
right.
fucking
It's almost
they
like that deck was built to beat Telvanni and not as many other things as dominantly, but
seriously though, like an Ebenheart Rage is like the deck to play against Telvanni. If I have trouble
yeah, in
fucking
a
beating
Telvanni
Telvanni,
heavy meta, yeah.
yeah, then you play Ebenheart Rage essentially, which is a deck I
Another
hate.
staple card that's another staple Telvanni card is Blackhand Messenger. You've played against my brother, I think, before. Me and him are in complete agreement about how much we hate when that card gets played against us as
Blackhand
like
Messenger.
probably predominantly aggro players or whatever.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Just in general, Blackhand Messenger is one of those cards that when it comes down, it's like okay, so they're gonna rebirth it. They're
shenanigans.
gonna rebirth it.
Shenanigans,
Like
bro. They're gonna the rest of their hand is all options to do something with that card. Like
That's how it feels when I'm playing Nixox Assassin. Actually, it's like fuck. If I just get a Black Hand Messenger down against
Oh,
this aggro deck, then I'll be all
trust me.
right.
Why do you think I traded with it instead of going face when I've masked you
Uh,
on that?
yeah, no, that was fun. Well, in general, if you're a good aggro player, you will trade into Black Hand Messenger because that's not a card you want on the board. Same with like uh, House Kinsman. You don't want that card on the board either.
I mean, not only can you like Dark Rebirth it, but you can slap a steel sword on it, and then it's going to town on you, draining it for 3.
Yeah, in Dagoth, it's actually a big pain. Like you see some of the guys run it in Dagoth, and they'll throw like a fucking Sentinel
I
Battle
did
Mace
that
on it.
recently for the very first time, dude. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah, no, fucking Sentinel Battle Mace on a Black Hand Messenger is a huge pain.
It's a problem, dude. It's a problem. If you don't have silence, like GG, which is why I try to always have silence. What other control decks have we not touched on enough? Ooh, we got someone typing in the chat.
Yeah, he's like most of the top 20 I feel plays some sort of aggro. It's all those stupid move decks or goblins. I mean,
That's coming from someone whose name is Smorkface?
yes. Yeah. No, it's fucking I mean, he's not necessarily wrong.
Is that ironic?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I just didn't know. Ooh, they talked about my friend Ring Difference also.
Natty boy.
The goat.
Probably like
Or not
I
the goat,
mean,
but you know,
not well, okay, like that let's
the
I got to
one of the modern goats.
I don't like tooting his horn cuz he's good enough at doing it for himself. And you know, if he ever does end up watching these or fucking whatever, then you know, yes, Matt, you are a good player. Fucking
Great player.
probably one of the best modern players in general, I would say.
Well, if you just consider the amount of time in the game versus the accomplishments as a metric, like he's up there for sure. Modern
Oh
day.
well, I would say he's probably number one then. Like if we're talking in
Well, I
terms of
mean, I don't
that.
remember. I don't know if I remember what his background in other card games is versus someone like me who this was their first like CCG or TCG or whatever you want to call it. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I collected Pokemon cards, but that's not the same. I just collected them because I thought they were cool. So the learning curve was a bit steeper, I guess, than someone who, I don't know, came from Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of had an unfair advantage because
Hearthstone.
I played all of the fucking meta card games, I guess you could call them, like Yu-Gi-Oh, Hearthstone. Fucking, I
I
played
don't think
Gwent
that's
in the game.
I don't think that's an unfair. It's just an advantage. I mean, how is that unfair that you played other
No,
games?
no,
You know what I
I just
mean?
mean like if we were like you know play basically like from a day one perspective, like it was like somebody
Yeah,
like me versus like you know your day one, it would not really be a very fair
sure.
comparison. Because like I've for instance, I've never played a season where I haven't hit legend ever. Like in my
I certainly
entirety of
have.
playing, in my entirety of playing, like and this is like I don't know. I started with Prophecy Battle Mage. I know it sounds like you know fucking oh, but it is a good starting deck for people that are like just getting into the game. They want to play a game. They want to play quick. They want to
Oh
know
yeah,
whatever. Get to fucking legend. You want to
sure.
you know whatever. Usually, like my progression was Prophecy Battle Mage, Aggro Sork, and then Aggro Satyr.
Well,
I think.
that's the whole point. Is you had a progression. You didn't make Prophecy Battle Mage your whole personality for time immemorium, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to steer, new players away from.
Yeah.
Just
And
because you're able to win with a deck and you weren't able to win before, that doesn't mean you have to play it for the next 12 years and never change. Like,
yeah. There's actually there was a player that just commented in the chat there. He said Stealer of Secrets is another type of OT, like another control type.
oh, don't get me started on that.
Yeah,
That is one of the
we
most
can
against the spirit of the game decks and the interactivity that was supposed to be part of this whole thing.
we can touch on it for a second actually, because I think that it's
That is a control type of deck, yeah, for sure.
and actually you know what. I do have, and this is gonna sound weird because I actually don't. I actually hate Stealer of Secrets in general.
As you should.
But the reason I hate Stealer of Secrets is because people don't build Stealer decks the way I think they should. They build them
You
as
mean in like a cool or fair way?
well. I mean, basically the way there are ways to build around Stealer where it's not just a fucking literally a deck of removal, which is just fucking annoying to play
The people
against.
who
It's
make it that way can kick rocks as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, no, fucking you guys need to fucking broaden your
Like
horizons
what?
and
You want me to sit there and not be able to even play the game? Like every card I play gets removed for the first
it's it's
15 turns? Oh, that's a
it's
lot of fun.
point click removal. It's there's nothing to it. It's not a hard deck to play. If you think it's a hard deck to play,
I could train a
then
monkey how to do that, like not even a
it,
human being, like
anyway, the point of that being is that you can build it around cycling and you can build it around card draw and
sure.
other cool stuff that you don't need to fucking build it around removal. And I actually have a battle mage that was it started off as just being the regular like raider combo deck, where you try to get 5 relentless raiders on the board and then you swing and do a damage and whatever, and you know
I love that.
the knives kill them. But it actually, it has like an Onkano
Relentless
red
Raider's
year.
such a cool card.
It has like an Onkano red year side to it. It also, because it's running Wisp Mother, so I can abuse cards like Elusive Schemer. So I put in like Baron of Tyr. So if I want to go like more of like a
Sure.
board control kind of thing, like I throw down with
Yeah.
Baron of Tyr, and I have a bunch of guards now. But it also runs, because of the nature of the deck in general. It runs Stealer of Secrets because it does need to have a fair amount of removal, but it doesn't have so much removal that it feels like all I'm fucking doing is removing your cards.
Yeah, because
Which
that's not fun for anyone. I don't know how people could have fun playing a deck like that, honestly. Like
no, it's rough. It really is. And I
it
mean,
wasn't specifically that deck, but it was decks kind of in that same vein, like back when people did play Tribunal Control with like a lot of actions and stuff like that. That's actually what led me, and I think I wrote about this in my write-up I did for you guys when you were doing like deck
yeah,
spotlights,
yeah, yeah.
about that led me to like create Burn Battle Mage. I was like, listen,
Because you need to
I'm
have something
trying
that
to
can do damage right away and not have to
without
stick
having to
around.
survive. Exactly. Like I was like, I'm trying to play aggro the way I see, these streamers play it or whatever, but like my creatures don't even survive to the next turn when I play them. They just die. They don't ever get to hit face. So why not just notice that there's all these creatures that do damage before it's even
Yeah.
the enemy's turn. They don't have to survive in order to do their job of, deal damage to face or whatever. Let's try that instead. And ironically, burn decks are one of the better chances against a Stealer of Secrets OTK because you can chip away and keep doing damage. And if they're not running a smart version that has like drain creatures instead of just actions, you can actually eventually beat them down with that.
Well, something I'd like to actually touch on here is there's two different ways to fight against a Stealer of Secrets deck. And you can
Sure.
fight it the way that you're saying there with like burn, or you can try playing cards and basically make them match your creatures with their removal, which I don't recommend doing it that way because usually they will win in that matchup. Their deck is literally made to do that.
Yeah, they're
But
favored for sure.
the way I like to fight Stealer, if I know it's a Stealer deck right off the bat, like, and you can pretty much tell.
It's easy to tell. Yeah, it's easy to
You can
tell.
pretty much tell if, like, if they're playing something like Reverberating Strike on turn 3, it's like, okay, yeah, this guy's probably fucking running Stealer. Um, but yeah, so if I notice Stealer deck, I just pass my turn. I don't even play anything. I pass my turn, pass my turn, pass my turn, pass my turn, up until, like, whatever. I have a handful of cards. I'll play a card. I might play a card. They can remove it with whatever they want. But they end up with a fucking handful of cards they can't play because you have nothing to remove, and you end up with a fucking handful of cards that normally you wouldn't have together, and you can start making combos. And then you start making combos, and you start doing damage, like, decent damage, and putting decent
Sure.
stuff out in one turn, and you hit them, you chunk them down that way. And that way I find is very effective to fight Stealer of Secrets. But normally, it
Also,
most
if you can
people,
get them to a situation where you can force them to overdraw and maybe they, their one ring of mentoring or their Laneth or whatever it might be, you just luck into them, discarding something by mistake because they have too big of a hand and you finally hit them and then they overdraw or whatever.
yeah. Well, I think if you're playing a Stealer of Secrets deck and you're only running one Mentor's Ring, fucking, you're a nutcase anyway. One
Well,
Mentor's
what kind
Ring,
of people are making these decks anyways? I mean,
Mentor's Ring in general. Used to think that it was like a one of kind of card, but it really, like, if you want to have if you're running
Probably
Mentor's
2, I would
Ring
say.
in any deck, it want at least two,
2,
at
yeah.
least two, like for sure. Like two is a really good number of Mentor's Ring to have. Anyway, um, yeah, that's basically the kind of decks in general. I mean, we didn't touch on every single deck that you're going to see, and they will come up eventually. We'll definitely mention stuff that
Right.
we've forgotten, but something to think about and to talk about and whatever would be like a decks that we've mentioned. And in particular, I think something good to kind of move into is I'm going to play a couple of ladder games and see
Okay.
what we've come up against. And based on
Yeah,
what I
that'll
face,
present some matchups, yeah.
yeah, it'll kind of show us like, okay, like what is the ladder right now? And then it's like, how am I going to change whatever I'm running to um, basically to combat that in such a way that I
Right, so
don't
like
have
we
to.
talked about aggro and mid kind of a little bit. I think their goals, like so for control, right, the goal is going to be to outlast the other person, to um, have a better late game than them, and your win condition is going to be something like either they concede after your opponent concedes when they're out of cards and you still have a lot of health that you've either kept or that you've drained back into, and they know that they can't keep having a chance to win because you have a handful of cards, they have none. You have more creatures on the board than they do, and the same health or like still a decent amount of health where the game is out of reach. Or their win condition could be something like you said with Telvanni, where they've got like Flesh Atronach waiting in the wings with like the little green 1/1 charge they can give Mentor's Ring to, so they set up some kind of like one turn kill that they've been building toward as they just focus on surviving an onslaught earlier from aggro or mid or whatever, as two examples. But I mean, control is basically playing to outlast you, for lack of a better way of describing it.
Yeah. So it's like with Dex. Okay, so I think Nami mentioned this on on Reddit. This was probably sometime last year when he was answering somebody's question on meta Dex or something along those lines. And he was
Sure.
like, so basically, these are the types of decks. Blah blah blah. One of them is basically he was like, control is this, and like normally like control is like Telvanni, and decks like Telvanni. I think it was actually talking about when to break a rune and when not to break a rune, right? And
Ooh,
and the whole thing with this was like decks like Telvanni. It was like always break the rune if you're like anything less than a control deck. You break a rune against Telvanni and you keep pushing damage, because if you don't, then all
they're
they
gonna
have to do
win.
is
Yeah.
survive. Telvanni is a deck very very much like that, where its win condition isn't necessarily anything to. It doesn't even need to be a good win condition. It just needs to survive. If Telvanni survives, then they win. That's
Yeah,
just the
because
plain and simple
ag-
the way it
aggro
is.
and mid aggro and mid decks are not meant to go into like turn 30 of the game or turn
Yeah,
40 of the game, like and still
but
be,
it's where it's
doing
running
work.
cards like Devace Experiments and fucking shit. Anything in blue, really. Like you can abuse it to the extent that Telvanni can abuse it to. Basically, will just win you the game late game. Like, you know what I mean? Like Lonath. Okay, cool. I play Lonath and I have any card in my deck that I want. Like, okay, well, what do
Any
you
of
have
those
in
75 cards.
what do you have in your deck? It's like, oh, I'm actually running Tinkering. Okay, well now shit's starting to get really hairy because like, oh, I'm going to use Tinkering on Loneth, and you're going into at least 11 costs. But if you have
If not a
anything,
12, yeah.
most Telvannis will run Ayleid Guardian, which is the perfect card to fucking tinker, by the way. Which is kind of funny because I love tinkering, but I hate Ayleid Guardian. So
Yeah, it's a
I
bit
I
strong,
only I only ever run them together in Singleton, and
which is fair.
I kind of justify running shitty, like if you're running a shitty control whatever, like you can honestly, if you want to run Yagram's Workshop in a fucking
Do it
uh
in Singleton.
neutral Singleton deck, absolutely, I'm all for it. If you want to run
I'll
fucking
buy that.
yeah, if you want to run fucking any shitty combo in a fucking Singleton deck, I am all for it. I don't care. Run your Alduin Reanimate combo in a Singleton deck. I really don't give a fuck. But seriously though, like it doesn't bother me. But it's like if you're gonna run that in a regular card and then fucking put like three reanimates, fucking you know three rebirths, fucking or three burials and all that shit, and basically make your deck specifically about that stupid combo, then it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
I can't stand that shit. Like that shit bothers
Speaking of
me.
Singleton, shout out to the Singleton Gauntlet this weekend for
Yes,
those who intend
actually,
to play.
somebody was actually talking earlier, and they were asking if I was going to suggest any fun decks to play for the Singleton Gauntlet. Um, I mean, always a winner, in my opinion, is any like Singleton decks in general are fun. Singleton decks in general are, if you're good with them, like if you're good at Singleton, then they're super fun, and you can build it however you want. You can build it more aggressively. You can build it
I
more of
wish
a
this
mid
event lets
range.
you actually build it the way you normally do with the 3 cards they ban or whatever, though.
I mean, I can see why they don't though, because it's literally then it
I
would just
can
be
too, yeah,
a race
I
to
can
get
too, mhm.
siege, and then it's like, okay, well, I win, I
But
got siege.
for someone like me who doesn't play Singleton very much, it would be a fun opportunity to play it more if I was allowed to in this event, because I always play the events, but, like, I don't know. I get why they did it for sure.
I mean, if you don't get to play siege, but you can kind of make your own siege though. Like really, just run
That's
like
maybe
mushroom.
the most that's maybe the most AROS thing I've heard you say in a while.
If you run, I don't know, if you like run like mushroom tower and stuff, like if you run like device
Sure,
experiments like on like Nocrin or something, then you can kind of make your own
sure,
siege really.
that's fair.
But yeah, no, like yeah, that is definitely a fucking me thing to say. Make your own siege, you know, as if the
For this event,
me.
I usually run, like, a purple heavy, sorcerer just because it's hard to find, like, 50 good or even however many creatures you're running to find that number when you can only run one of them, but purple has a lot of like strong individual creatures to choose from or whatever, and I
Purple
just have
is a
always liked
very
sorcerer.
Purple is a very good choice for any deck in this that is going to have success. Is probably going to run some sort of purple, or it's going to be like it'll have green. I think green, blue, or purple. That's funny because
Oh,
like
someone wants you to play while we're talking.
somebody want, yeah, yeah. So I'm actually going to match up
Give the
now.
people what they want, A
Yeah.
Ross.
No, I was fucking. I don't know what I was gonna do. I was gonna pull something up, I think, and I fucking forgot all about it because I got talking there. Um,
As we do.
so I'll play that Dagoth deck that I showed you earlier. I actually made it on my alt. I don't
Okay,
know what.
you're like gaslighting me. When are you Legend 102? I swear earlier today you were like in the
Oh,
teens or something.
yeah, and then I started fucking around.
Like you always do.
Yeah, yeah. It
That's
was
okay.
fucking.
I just want
Ah,
to make
damn.
sure I wasn't like, tripping, like, because sometimes I
No,
do.
no. This is Dan Hep. Fucking actually, I really like Dan Hep. He's a nice guy.
I've matched him a bunch of times.
He's got a good heart.
He's
He doesn't have the
he's got a
best.
good Ebonheart. Is that what you said? A good Ebonheart?
He doesn't have the best barometer for like what is broken and stuff. Like he likes, I don't know, he likes the support decks, which I don't particularly agree with a whole lot of.
Man, we didn't talk about like
He
support monk as like a control deck or whatever.
Yeah, he he's playing. I think this is like his max mana. He calls it Ebenheart, which is just another deck I'm not a huge fan of
Is he
personally.
a friends
But
lister of yours?
yeah. Actually, I was his first friend. He didn't actually have friends on the game at all until I
Oh,
talked to him
nice.
on Facebook. I found him on the Facebook group, and I was like, "Oh, you're Dan Hep." I was like, "Fuck, man, I mashed you on the ladder all the time." I was like,
Is his
we
name in real life Dan Hep?
Daniel Hepner, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah." I was like, "Fuck it,
Nice.
no way." Anyway, I was like, "Dude, add me in game." He's like, "Oh, I don't even have friends." He's like, "I never really understood the point of it." And I was like, "Oh, dude, come on, just share decks and have a chat and whatever." And like he hits me up all the time now, just like chit chatting about this and that.
You broke
Which
his shell open.
yeah, so like now he has other people. He has like Death Row like on his friends list, of course, because like
There you go.
everybody who's got
Oh, he's
friends
a
on their friends list
yeah,
is like,
he's a social butterfly.
yeah. But no, it's definitely interesting to how he plays the game, how he views things, and it's kind of cool. Like he didn't have friends on his friends list until I was like, "Yo, dude, what do you mean?" But this is actually a pretty decent matchup for this deck. I think
Is this mid Dagoth?
it's the Dagoth that I showed you earlier. It runs the camels. It's funny. I have two camels in here.
Is this
Um,
like the combo Dagoth then?
it does run the combo, so it runs the Neophyte Consume Ed
Okay.
Dagoth combo with Ring, but it's not necessarily built 100% around it. So it's basically like a regular mid-range Dagoth, but I run Twilight, I run Fighters Guild Steward, which is the main combo kind of deal of the deck, which is why you see the Extortionist here. Because this card basically getting to fight whatever it wants is nice. It's a good thing, it's what you want.
Is this
And
the one that runs like the neutral ones that gain keywords from the next cards in your deck, or is that a different one?
no, that's a different deck. I actually don't
Okay.
have it. I actually don't have a deck off
You
but
used to though, right?
I at one point, like a while ago. The Illusory Mimic is a fun card to play, though. Definitely a shout out to that
Especially in
card.
Dagoth, I mean, because it can turn in, yeah, it can turn into Dagoth or.
So here I'm keeping this because I only run two of them, so I want to keep one, obviously. And yeah, I don't have anything necessarily to reactivate the camel other than Fear Totem. So like the camel's not necessarily here to be like spammed and resummoned. It's kind of just to get through the deck and like to cycle through. Uh, and I was like, you know what would help me kind of do that? What would help me draw cards and also kind of put if I had run into it, Dagoth in the grave because it's usually like the problem is I draw into him and then I have to discard him from my hand. So I have to have either
Right.
Gambler
With
or I
like
have to hit
Gambler,
face
yeah,
with a
whatever.
thief, which is usually a pain, especially in the later on in the game. Like if anybody sees a thief, especially later on in the game, they're going to silence it or they're going to kill it. You don't want your opponent drawing cards, so obviously it makes sense to get rid of it. But it kind of sucks for me because I'm not running Palace Conspirator in this deck, for instance, right? So
So
just
are you thinking you would normally need or want to be playing this particular matchup then against like a control Ebonheart deck?
so
Playing
I
this
know
particular.
I know how he plays this. He actually runs Marquinaz in his deck, so he runs it a little more aggressively than most people will. So
Okay.
I'm thinking next turn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Extortionist in the shadow. And actually, might not even be next turn. It depends on what we draw into because I think he's going to trade the camel and he'll probably swing face. He'll probably break a rune. I'm thinking he might not. I'm not sure. Um, but basically, I'm going to wait and see what he does. And yeah, so he is going to play it more aggressively. He's not going to worry about the camel, which is fine. So the way I'm going to play this is I'm going to try to mitigate damage and I'll take a bit of punishment in the early game, but we have things like Hand of Dagoth and blah blah blah, like the drain cards that pretty
Yep.
much every Dagoth runs
Dagoth is
anyway.
famous for, yeah.
But yeah, so I'm gonna put him here. Actually, shit, oh, can't do that. I used my Shadow Shift earlier, but I run 3 Shadow Shifts in here, but relying on drawing into another kind of rough. So,
Obviously, most of the decks that I play, if I see
but if I
Ebonheart and it's not like the rare aggro version, I'm thinking I have to win this game like in 6 turns or something, or else it's gonna get ugly. Like
Yeah, so what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to put him here. Hopefully he survives, and I can play Mighty Conjuring in the field lane next turn.
they don't
Mighty
have
Con
any lethal out, so it has a decent chance to survive. I feel like.
Mighty Conjuring will be an issue for him, I think.
Does he run?
Like Fell the Mighty and shit. He might.
No, no, no. I'm thinking of like Mummify. Does he run something like that?
Oh, he probably does. Yeah, I would be surprised if he didn't have it.
That's a decent answer, especially obviously on Prophecy for bigger creatures like that.
I do not fear.
I found myself in like some
Yeah.
mid
See,
or mid troll that runs purple running one Mummify, just like one of recently.
I feel like Mummify is the kind of card that you want to have like at least 2 of, though.
Well, I mean, it's a prophecy. Purple doesn't have all that many prophecies. I don't know, like especially like in the tribunal where Laneth can look for it. So there's more than one way to like find it, I guess. Like one seemed like a decent
Because
number, but
he's actually poking, so like I feel like he's probably gonna win this. Just pretty rough.
most Ebonhearts would not be poking like that.
No,
You did
but
kind of
it's
call that he plays it aggressive, though. I mean, sometimes you just have the better board, even when you're control for whatever reason. Like,
well. I mean,
and it makes sense sometimes to roll with it. Not always. Like,
Heal or harm.
well, like what was their starting hand? It was like Harpy fucking Camel or something. I don't know. I kept a stupid start at the end of the day too. Like I didn't mulligan for anything in
oh,
particular.
it's your first. matchup of the session, so or the first game of the session, so warming up.
Yeah, well, we can make all the excuses for me. But yeah, at the end of the day,
If
I
you
made
had
a,
one more
I'm,
Magicka, then Rage would clear the field lane, but you would still lose.
there's a way that I can not lose this, I think. Let me find it. I think I think.
I think I can. I think I can. I mean, if you played Mighty Conjuring Shadow and then you killed. Hmm. I miss having all premium cards like you do. Seems like he might have you over a barrel.
Fuck it. Just in general, I was like, I need to get a guard, but how am I going to get a guard? The only guard I have available is the Mighty Conjuring, which is rough. And
Right. And you don't have
fucking
one to consume with the 4-cost dude to
yeah,
summon with the activator or
that was
whatever.
like my only possible saving grace was like I might be able to throw up a guard with him, and he's gonna kill it with the the lethal guy, and then swing
I think
7.
if you had played Mighty Conjuring in Shadow Lane and then traded into his 6/6 guard, he technically wouldn't have had lethal without having certain cards in hand that next turn, but obviously he probably wins either way. I don't know if I saw that wrong, but
uh, well, so if I swing into the 6, you say?
yeah, because
I
then he has
I was
one
at
less damage in field than you had health or
Yeah, but I was
whatever.
at 8 HP, so he had 8 damage total in the shadow lane. So he only needed to poke with the Fighters Guild recruit, and then he could skip the rune with Nahagleaf.
But I'm saying if you had played Mighty Conjuring in the Shadow Lane
Oh, um,
and then traded your Belly G into the 6/6 in Shadow, he
no,
technically
you're
would be 1 damage short.
yeah, no, I noticed it after I did it because I was gonna kill that, and then I was gonna Swift Strike, and I was like, I didn't really think much past that.
Well,
And
it's
yeah,
it's it's always easier to see things when you're not the one in the pilot chair because you have no pressure on you. You're just observing. So keep that in mind,
um,
folks. If you're spectating someone and you're suggesting things that you think are helpful, like it's easier to do that than it is to be the one playing. And sometimes people may want to just focus or be the one to make the decision or whatever. But sometimes they want advice too. I mean, or they may ask you.
I feel like it's so hard. Like I have difficulty myself spectating people because it's like uh, I feel like everybody wants help, but I know for a fact that's not true because like if somebody was coming into my game and they were like, oh, do this, it's like, all right, buddy, I'm gonna fucking turn on my do not disturb if you don't fucking stop.
Well, there's different. I mean, there's different levels of players, right? You have your people that have been playing for like 9 years or however long the game's been out. Then you have people who are trying it out. I mean, and everywhere in between.
Yeah, so people are gonna want different things, of course, and people are gonna be appreciative of different stuff. Some people want advice, some people don't. You can usually tell, uh, pretty much like
Yeah, people will
almost
make it clear.
immediately.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think what we trade into Ungo, have to trade into Ungo. I don't think that's not necessarily even worried about the wisp
This
either.
this could kind of be somewhat of a mirror here because you're not going to be playing Ungolem usually in like a aggro Dagoth, so this is probably mid-range
But
ish.
it's funny that you say that though, because usually when you see wisp, it means aggro.
Chaos take you.
Usually.
I will end you.
I mean, I run that just to have more drain, like in any
Early
mid
game.
that
Yeah.
in, but Because yeah, it has the famous drain cards, but then besides that, there's not a lot more. So Wisp
It's
is
also
great. I mean,
it's also nice
3/2 and
because
drain for 2.
it's basically Green's it's Green's substitute for Ravenous Hunger when it comes to like a rage combo too.
Very true. I mean, yeah, if you play those 2 cards on the full lane, I mean, you're right back in the game if you were behind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're gaining 12 from the opponent, and if your lane is full too, you're gaining another 9.
And then you
So,
can swing after that if it was already on the board for another 3 potentially.
yeah, 24.
Insane.
So I don't know what he's running because it very well could be like a mid-range deck. But I just want to.
With those 2 cards, that screams kind of mid-range, mid-troll. It's interesting, like people on the ladder that I see playing Dagoth build it so differently than I did for a long time. I went kind of like a mid-grow with Swift Strike and like, you know, creatures that were good at fighting for board, but a lot of people run like, you know, the Goblin Scourge or whatever gives you 2 curses, and then cards like Blackhand Messenger, and then they kind of
Yeah, I built a deck around it. I built a Dagoth around basically it was a mid battle mage, but it also ran like it ran like forked bolt and stuff that I personally like running in my mid battle mage.
yeah.
That Aini kind of gave me shit for, and his chat had a fun time talking about me after that. But anyway, Forked Bolt because it also synergizes with Leaf Lurker, and Leaf Lurker is a fantastic card for just in
Such a good
general
card.
any green deck that has trouble with
Yeah.
like big bodies
Leaf
like
Lurker.
Alien Guardians and shit like that. Fluffy's like, I don't fucking care
And
if I run an
Oblivion
Alien
Gates.
Guardian. Yeah, and Gates. Leaf Lurker in general is a great card, so I ran 3 Leaf Lurkers and
Fantastic card.
3 Stone Throws because you know mid battle mage has high like big bulky
And
creatures.
Oblivion Gates too.
Yeah, and also Gates. So I was never worried about running into like invade like or anything like that. And it was a mid battle mage version of it, so it was like running like you know the nice board control kind of cards, right?
Yeah,
Um,
wardy boys, thick
it
chunky ones.
it was that was actually a nasty version of Dagoth that I made, and it's funny because Fluffy made a move Dominion deck that same month that went on like a 35 win streak, and I beat him
And you were the
twice
one
in
that ended it?
I beat him twice in a row with that Dagoth deck.
Dang.
Face me, you dog.
Move
So
Dominion, that almost sounds like Insane T tried to do something
he
sort of
used
like that.
he used Fluffy's deck in order to make whatever monstrosity he ended up coming up with
The
at the end there.
abomination.
Yeah, he ended up like adding crabs to it, and it was like it was a different deck at the end, but like he started off with Fluffy's core.
Hey, but I mean, that's what we've been telling people to do is to, you know, someone gives you a deck code, look at it, play it, and then make some changes, like make it your own.
Yeah, no, and he definitely did that.
It doesn't guarantee, you know, great results, but you should still do it.
I mean, his deck was pretty good actually, like for the most part. I think there was only a
And I
couple
got him
things
into
like well, he shared it with me, and he was like, "Can you just tell me how to improve this?" And I was like, I mean, I would run like this and this, and maybe this." So I'm getting the I'm getting the idea that this guy's probably running Singleton at this point. Orb of Vermina is usually a pretty dead giveaway, like a Singleton
Yeah,
deck.
you don't see it that often, but usually when people play it against me and pull it off, I'm like, man, they have so many cards, and some of them are mine.
Yeah, what the fuck?
What's going on? I was winning at some point.
This is but a dream waking over and over.
I think I'm gonna
I
wait.
remember when they first released like the tricolor decks or whatever, and like for some reason I thought Ascended Sleeper was like the best card. I was like, oh my gosh, it reduces the cards in your hand. Like,
Yeah, it's funny, and then you end up playing it, and you're like, "Oh, my hand's full of fucking spells or actions, I guess." And you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, this actually isn't as good as I thought it was." Like, but it is
I like
actually
the
a fa-
premium art though.
oh, dude, the premium art's sick.
Poor animal. You understand?
Okay, you just made me think of a new challenge for you. Make like either a Dagoth deck that somehow finds a way to have the Scald King where you have him reducing the cost of your creatures and then also Ascended Sleeper doing that, or to make an Ebonheart deck where you somehow find a way to get an Ascended Sleeper.
So like both of those are kind of like contingent on me facing the other deck with that deck and basically just running Gray Fox.
I mean, I didn't tell you, how to meet my challenge. I just gave you a challenge. I forgot
Yeah,
to ask this question earlier, but like, what archetype would you consider Unite the Houses to be?
whatever you want it to be. Fine. Like however you want to build the Unite the Houses deck is actually it's very funny because that probably is what this guy's running. Orb of Vermine is it.
Did you know that I
I
have
was gonna say Singleton, and then I saw him play the Moment, and it's like okay, Moment and Orb definitely fucking
right?
unite the houses, right?
Well,
What
did
would
you
I
know that
consider to be
I've never united the houses before?
seriously like ever?
Seriously, not even one time.
I was in your shoes last year, and then I actually played it, and like I don't know, some of my favorite decks are actually Unite decks. To be honest with you, like I really like the Halalu Unite that I have, because I tailored it now, like tuned it up so much that I can be aggressive with it if I want to. If it's like, oh, I'm not even gonna sit and wait for the fucking cards to come. Like I'm just gonna, I
Yeah,
have the cards. I'm gonna play them, and I can solitaire my
and it can
shit, and I
still
can
win even
boom, and
without it.
then yeah, and play without Unite the houses and still win that way. And honestly, I think that's the way you have to build Unite in general. Have a contingency plan. Otherwise, you're gonna end up like this guy here, where it looks like he's just gonna get face raced and
Yeah,
killed. He's probably gonna drop Ice Storm. If he doesn't have Ice Storm in his
in
hand,
before.
then he's gonna be pretty fucked. I think.
I'm partial to Halalu. Speaking of Halalu, I'm a big fan.
I'll actually play the Halalu deck next because it's a lot of fun, and it's definitely not a Unite deck that you see on the ladder like ever. So people see
And
Halalu and they're
then
like aggro or dragons or something, whatever. Like or like
I like mid
Slay, I
Halalu or
guess.
mid grow, but yeah. Slay
Slay
is
is
actually really
probably
strong. One of my long time friends in this game had such a strong Slay Halalu deck.
what was the name?
One second, I'm looking it up right. Oh, Ayun Zustu, I think.
Oh
He
yeah,
changed
yeah,
his
that
name
fella.
one time, but he ran for a long time like a nasty Slay Halalu. He was so good with it. He was one of my very first Legends friends in the game ever. Like before back when I was like Shadows and Silence. To piggyback off of the Unite question, what do you consider Singleton as far as the archetype? I mean, I know you can build it different ways, but like,
Singleton is almost always like mid troll or like control hard control combo.
yeah, Gumshoe, I swear, would beat people down with like a mid version that he had though. The original
Yeah.
kind of OG Telvanni mid
Okay.
Singleton.
So what Gumshoe would do is he would notice the cards in his hand and the cards on the board, and he would be like, okay, so in this situation, I can swing face. And if I mean, I've played my Singleton quite a bit on the ladder, and there are definitely times where I find like, especially where I run cards like Swift Strike, um, especially where I run cards like Swift Strike and shit like that in my Singleton, in particular, uh, I can actually out aggro some aggro decks because I have
Yeah.
access to cards like Baron Zaya. I run things
Mm-hmm.
like Dwarven Armaments, which just make cards ridiculous. So if I feel like I have a good hand for it and I want to go aggro and go face, like if you have like minimal to no removal in your hand, or if you're playing like the whole like face race game, you're gonna lose. Like I'm just gonna beat you because I'll be draining
Yeah.
while hitting you, and yeah, it's a pain. Like when I some games when I do it and I get away with it, it's like oh man, I fucking feel so bad for that guy. It's like
Yeah.
he
Well,
arguably
I
had
don't
a
know if
you
you.
know good thing going for like the first like
Yeah.
couple turns, and then it's like I was like nah, just started hitting him, and he was game over.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but I did go through a couple short phases where I was playing Singleton, and like obviously the obvious one is Telvanni, but I tried to make like a sorcerer and a tribunal version that I liked and had fun playing, and I would play it more like the kind of strong creature mid
Yeah,
kind
yeah, for
of in
sure.
the vein of Gumshoes, except I only ran the Telvanni version a couple times because it felt so obvious. I mean, it has Sun and Shadow in addition to Lana to look for a siege, so I mean, obvious. Why not choose that one? But
What are we going after? You will die where you stand.
So many persons.
I think my favorite deck archetype might actually be Midgrow, if to the extent that you can consider that an archetype or sub archetype, because
Sure.
it's like the perfect world between mid-range and aggro, because aggro, like true hard hyper aggro, limits you a little bit matchup wise,
You're always
whereas
on a
mid
timer.
right, exactly, but mid-grow you can throw in a few really strong cards at the top end that give you a chance against, later game type of decks or whatever. And that's something you brought up, is throwing in a few cards at the end of the curve, that are really strong to give you a chance, in the late game or whatever.
Yeah, like cards that you don't necessarily like see all the time. Like a fun
Right.
example of that is like
Good night.
I can't, not for this deck, but there, for instance, there was an invade spell sword deck that I made where it was like just kind of
Eight
playing on the
spell
whole.
sword.
Yeah, I know. No, it sounds stupid, but like the entire basic idea of it was to get to late game so I could use feed and hit like a drain creature with siege crawler. So basically, I'd give siege
Oh
crawler
yeah, yeah.
drain, and then I swing, gain 15, and then squish, gain another 15. So I'm gaining 30 HP, and then all of a sudden I'm back in the game, right? Or I just win
Wild.
outright because they're like, okay, I can't fucking deal with this 15/15 fucking drain breakthrough creature on the board, and yeah.
Speaking of siege crawler, I mean, you play a lot of combos. Have you played the combo with like bone armor
Oh yeah.
and because I've seen some people play that, and it's when they pull it off, it can catch you by surprise. Let me tell you,
Oh yeah, dude. No, that combo is wicked.
it's strong if they set it up right. I mean, BT dubs. I think I may call it a night after this game, but
Sure.
to respond for the first time to what you mentioned about doing this more than once a week, that's something I'm potentially open to at some point.
Sure. I mean, I know that work is super busy for you as of lately, so I mean,
That's not it. It's just um,
yeah.
honestly, sometimes I'm more tired from sitting and doing nothing all day than I am from when I'm actually moving and building airplane wings.
Well, I feel like it's also that you're not necessarily doing nothing either.
Oh, I play Legends.
Well, um, anyway, without going too much like into it, like there's a lot you get a lot on your mind, so I understand that. Well,
Oh yeah.
Citizen.
so sometimes doing nothing is pretty much the equivalent of doing a little too much.
That's fair. So this Halalu, it must be a Unite, since there's Unite the Houses in hand.
Yeah. So basically, I just
And
abused the shit out of
this guy's
Mudcrab.
running what, like a Control Empire, but not a good one? Or what are we looking at here?
I think he might also be Unite. Maybe I don't know.
That'd
I
be
don't
cool to
really
see
know.
Unite Mirror.
I don't really know if he's what he's playing.
This is truly the farthest thing from like anything that I have experience doing or playing or
If he's
building,
playing
so.
Unite, then I'm in trouble because I just gave him that. But it's
And
like
he's
I don't.
got like 4 of the colors up, yeah.
Well, it's rough because like that. Those are the only two colors that he needs.
He's
But I
missing,
also,
yeah.
but I didn't want to give him fucking Rothgar Forge because then I'm just
And
asking
do
myself
you
to
do
get.
you even do you even have like support removal handy or
Uh,
that you could
odd,
hit anytime soon?
oddly enough, I don't. But
No douchenick or anything?
no, but the game is pretty much over after I play Covenant Masterpiece. We're gonna hopefully get there.
Yeah, because those are the colors you need as well.
Yeah, we just kind of have to hope that he doesn't have the removal.
Well, and I mean, I like that it's sneaky because it's not showing, since it's an item equipped to him, it's not showing as a bunch of colors.
Oh, he's gonna wab a jacket. If he gives me a purple, then it's cool.
Nope.
Usually I'm looking for fucking blue, which is funny. But yeah, no.
Well,
Because
yeah, you got the
I have
line guard armament.
I
Yeah.
have cards in the deck that give me purple too, which is like another reason why normally I am
Like
looking
that
for blue.
yellow guard that summons a
Yeah,
card in the
yeah.
other lane.
Yeah, that's actually the perfect because that's the card I run. But also, it's like the good example of it is if you've ever run Guildsworn Unite, then blue to this deck is green to Guildsworn Unite, essentially.
That's fair. Have you ever won by playing Jarl Bald
Yep,
Roof and winning that way? That's
yep.
another one I've never done. But I've actually ran
It's
him before, whereas I've never even made a Unite deck. I mean,
it's much easier to get that win than you think actually, because like I first saw the card and I was like, "Fuck, man, that's gonna be impossible." Like they're always gonna have like means of killing a creature or something like that. But it's like, no, man, it's actually a lot easier than you think to get
if you get
to.
ahead and you have like, yeah, I mean,
Ah, this
removal,
asshole!
whatever.
He's just playing a thief deck, is what he's playing. The fucking guy.
What do you mean thief deck? Like he's
He's just
stealing your
stealing,
cards?
just steals my shit. Yeah, I
Just
feel like
trolling?
that's what it is. Anyway, I could be wrong, but yeah, it's kind of what it feels like.
Another question about have you done? Have you ever made or like won a game where you soul shred the other person's deck like all the way or something like that, run them out of cards?
Soul Shred was a card I never really cared for, to be honest with you,
That's
because
fair.
it's
I mean,
the
I
main
feel it.
reason. The main reason why is because in order to usually get that much damage or like that many pings on somebody, that you're gonna have like a substantial enough Soul Shred to like actually play, you could probably just kill them anyway. You know what I mean?
Right. It's kind of a win more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, you're gonna use it with market, like I guess, like you could. You know what I mean?
Before it goes off screen completely, I want to shout out Sword of the Inferno, one of my very favorite kind of like underplayed, underrated
Honestly,
cards.
Sword of the Inferno has
Love
a
that card.
place in a lot of decks that you wouldn't normally like think of. Like I think it has a place in
Love
like
that card.
Aggro Crusader. I think has a place for Sword of Inferno. With like
Oh yeah,
on a
Crusader's
drain
Assault.
on a drain creature with Crusader's Assault, especially if
Oh
you can
my
set it up
goodness.
in such a way where they have like a 1 HP creature on the board, so you can poke it with the sword, kill
Breakthrough.
it,
Yeah, breakthrough.
yeah,
Yeah.
draw your 3 cards or whatever it is, and then you go on to the
Drain
next
also.
creature. Yeah, it's fucking that. Yeah, that's where it's at.
I
Sword
love
of
it
the
in mid
Sword of the
battle
Inferno.
mage.
He's just gonna
I
fucking
know it's not like the
steal
better
this.
version of mid battle
He's
mage,
just
but
gonna
like
fucking steal this from me. I don't know why I played it.
because it's Taz Daddy and you have trauma from when I drew him against you top deck.
Oh yeah, twice in a row in the tournament and beat me.
Like an
Fucking
a-hole.
pretty upset about that. Good lord. So like, yeah, okay.
So he changes her so that you can't
But
kill.
that's also fine. Like I'm not too worried about that. But like,
Oh yeah,
I
because he
mean,
lost stats. I mean,
yeah, he could have kept the Araxia. I think. I guess he doesn't know what I
don't
have.
you
But like,
love don't you love when people play Mummify on a creature of yours and it ends up with the same or more stats or something like that?
that's the reason why actually. Like when I first, basically when I used to play like super often, like way back when fucking Saspiro was still
Oh
playing
yeah,
like
I
a
remember that
lot. Like
era.
me and him were fucking pretty tight. Like Mummify, I considered Mummify to
That's
be
how
a
me
bad. I
and
considered
Najaro used to
Mummify
be.
to be a bad card, like because it was like most of the decks I was running were like mid aggro, and it's like you're gonna Mummify my card. It's like whatever. I still have a creature. Like you know what I mean?
And
So
it's a
you're
2/2 now, and it used to just be a 1/3 that happened to buff other things or whatever. Like,
yeah, like it's like whatever. Fucking you play your
seems like a
stupid
waste of
card.
3 magicka.
Yeah, play your stupid card. See if I care.
Obviously, against like a lava Atro, it's a good play, but I mean, you're still
Well,
not
yeah,
developing your board, and you're leaving them with a creature when you didn't play a creature for that 3
I
magicka.
think
I
the
don't know.
thing that I wasn't necessarily thinking of is like the other implications of the card itself. Like Mummify is good because it takes away like whatever the card was. So like if you're using it on an Atronach, for instance, like you just said, then and that's
Yeah, it
definitely
changes the creature type. Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I don't know why I didn't think to bring this up, but you made me realize that like what you and Papito kind of had for a while, or I'm assuming you guys would just like get on every night and like chat and just play the game and stuff, or respect each
yeah,
other.
yeah, pretty
Me and
much.
Najaro, had that same like in-game relationship for a long time. Like every night we just chat and one would spectate the other and stuff, and we would like, you know, root each other on or try to help each other not tilt, you know, with all the BS or whatever.
Did he just like straight up quit or what?
He still occasionally pops his head up in the Discord or in like the Facebook group chat that he started with not even just AZV guys or whatever, but like I haven't seen him on the game in a long, long time. That makes me sad.
Yeah, I think it's been like fucking ever since I've seen the guy actually play.
Oblivion awaits you.
Which is like weird. It's, you know, he used to be on all the time, just like us.
Not just on, but like, you know, organizing a lot of like clan stuff like the meta snapshot or different tournaments. I mean, stuff like that too. Which I miss quite a bit. Even though I could try to like step into that role more if I really, you know,
Display.
was actually motivated enough.
Bow to your victory.
Anyway, I was actually gonna ask, why don't you? I mean, if you're not gonna like expect Broda to do it, or Radical. uh, Not only that, but I mean, I wouldn't expect them to have the people on their friends list in order to even reach out to have like an actual
Before
turnout
I
or something like that.
answer your question, you made me remember a question I was going to ask you about Singleton slash Broda because he's definitely, I would consider, a Singleton player or like a decent Singleton player. Is there anything about his Singleton decks that you thought was noteworthy or cool or good or whatever versus like yours or whatnot?
I mean, okay, he runs
He brings them to tournaments and stuff. I mean,
well, yeah. In regards to that whole thing, yeah, he does play Singleton. I think his Singleton is whack. To be honest with you, it's so fucking like the
it's
curve
out
is
there for sure.
the curve is backwards. Is essentially the way I look at his because he's got like he's got like tens across the board, and then it gets to like 7+, and he's got like fucking like 20 or something like that. It's
He
something
also has like
ridiculous.
100 card. He plays 100 card version too. Like if not,
Yeah,
a
that's just a bad deck. I'll say
but
it.
he
I'll
wins
say
with it sometimes. Like,
yeah, but you can win with anything, you know, especially a singleton where yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
play
especially a
workshop and
sing.
you win. Are you really winning? Like, are you winning,
Well,
son?
yeah, no, okay. So, in regards to that singleton deck that you're talking about there, it's literally he like just crutches on siege and that's it. I don't see that tribunal winning most games without siege. Really, realistically speaking. I mean,
I mean,
obviously
yeah,
it
there's
can.
probably a whole school of thought that like the point of singleton is to, you know, I don't know, like obviously it feels really good to pull off like an unexpectedly amazing siege or whatever that you haven't seen before, or that just turns out to be like one of those epic, you know, memorable sieges or whatever. But um, I don't know, like obviously there's other things you can shoot for with the deck, like
One thing I will mention is Telvanni Singleton. It runs the
that's his better one probably, I would say.
it no, it is. It's a good deck, even though I don't agree with it. Um, it's a good
That's
deck.
fair. I mean,
He runs Thorana and Goblin Skulk in that deck, and I just want to point out
nice.
how cool that combo is because for those of you who don't know, Thorana will take any spell that you play, and it'll
Make it
put it
zero
in.
cost.
Yeah, make it 0 cost, and it'll put 3 copies of it into your deck. Goblin
And then
Skulk,
Skull can start finding it.
yeah, when it pilfers, it'll grab that card. But he also runs other stuff in it, like he runs Curse, I think, and like maybe one other like Fire Bloom in his singleton. So it's not just there for nothing, which is kind of
Sure.
funny because I was like, don't think that having Curse or Fire Bloom in a singleton deck is good for you in general because when you play Siege, you don't want to hit a fucking Fire Bloom or a
That's
fucking
true. That's very true.
Curse. You know what I mean? And you want all high value cards for your Siege. Essentially, is what
Power and feel my
the whole
fury.
kind of
But you
singleton thing
also
is.
don't want Skulk to not draw anything if it's gonna survive and
Uh-huh.
get to hit
Which is
face.
so this is actually funny because this is actually where I was going with this. I was talking to Broder the other day. I sent him that Battle Mage deck that I had with the incursion, the Daedric incursion for Lava
Oh,
Atronach.
nice.
And
Yeah.
I was like, check this out. And he was like, "Oh, so edgy. You're running fucking drain in mid battle mage." Because like, first thing he noticed was the Clockwork Dragon, right? And I was like, no, I was like, no, man, it's got this and this. And he's like, yeah, but you're also gonna pull like her scene, or you're gonna grab like the Twilight with it, or like whatever. He's like, I don't. He's like, it's not very reliable. And I was like, well, I need something for when if I have a fucking Daedric Incursion in my hand and I haven't played uh, Conjuration Tutor yet. I can't just have a brick in my fucking hand. You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
have to be able to grab
Yeah.
something. And why not make it
Yes.
two useful cards? Like Twilight is useful against a lot of shit. Like you can play Twilight against any deck on the ladder, and
You
it'll
can.
have significant impact. So it's
Which
one of those
really
cards.
raises the question of why I never run it when I should.
Twilight's a good card. Like I feel like if you run it in a couple decks, like you'll kind of go through your little Twilight phase where you'll try to pop it into a few decks here and there, and then
I think the
But
reason is because it used to be a staple card in Telvanni, and I'm so biased against Telvanni
control.
control.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, no, he was like, oh, he's like, actually, I think it might have been TMO that said it. He's like, oh, just take out the Hercene and the Twilight, so it's 100% of the time. And I was just like, that is not a good idea. Like, I was like, I respect you as a player, and
That's
normally
more
I
of like
take your
a tutoring situation, right? Like,
yeah, and normally I take your advice, or like I'll kind of like consider it, but I was just like, no, not even gonna consider doing that because that's just such a bad idea. Like, why would I do that? Like, then when I play the card, I need to have the Conjuration Tutor played already for the card to be useful at all. So like, what if I draw it in my first like 5 cards? You know, it's
yeah.
just a useless card. Yes, throwing a Skulk Switch Strike is an OTK, and it's actually a funny one.
OTK.
It's a super funny one and super difficult one to get because you are hitting and breaking every single rune along the way. But
Which with my
it's
luck would be Prophecy City.
but it is funny when you get it because it's like, oh yeah, I just I got this once in a blue moon OTK,
I think the
and
game must have an internal tracking like thing that knows that I have broken the most runes out of anyone, and so therefore I have
okay,
the highest
okay,
hitting a prophecy.
calm your hormones there, big guy. I don't think you've broken the most runes out of
Oh,
anybody.
come on. I was not 100% serious when I said that. I thought you would laugh if I
But
said it.
it is kind of funny though because it's like I mean, how would you even go about fucking?
You
Is it
wouldn't.
is it a stat in your
No.
stats page?
Uh, maybe. I don't
I
think
think you
so.
now. I think you have to
Plus,
check.
well, I don't have my old account, so can't see my true amount anyways unless
That's
I
okay.
look at it.
I can always ask Juno what it is. It's not a big deal. You should
He has
actually
added some though.
check. Yeah, but check and see.
Okay, fine. I'll stop spectating and go check. And then I'm gonna hop off. Like I said, I was going to stats.
Yeah.
I don't see runes broken, sadly. They should keep track of that.
You would think, eh?
Maybe I think the reason they don't is because if they did track that, there wouldn't be room on a computer screen for how many I've broken.
Okay. Okay. Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, I made you laugh though, right?
System overload, all right?
Exactly. That's why the
That's
game crashes every time I
that's
try to see my stats on there.
yeah, that's so funny.
On that
Imagine
note, kids,
yeah,
don't play Workshop.
yeah, don't fucking play Workshop for real. That's actually like that's life advice.
Play Garnog instead.
I mean, I know it's not necessarily the what you were expecting to hear, but yeah.
Well, this was fun. Hopefully a
Yeah.
good production with the live stream and everything and the audio. I don't
Yeah.
think I saw anyone commenting that, I was echoing or I was too quiet or whatever, so
Yeah, no,
we're making progress.
I think that everything worked out pretty well this time.
Same time, same place next week.
Yeah, or sooner if you're available and willing.
I will keep you posted on that.
Have business with
But until next time, kids, this is Shadow AZZ signing off and reminding you to never, ever play
Fucking
Workshop.
don't fucking play
Just
Workshop.
don't do it. You don't want to.
Yeah.
You think you want to, but you don't. All right, man. I will talk to you later.
Yeah, man, take her easy. Get a good night's sleep into you, bud.
We'll attempt to have a good rest of your stream and everything.
I shall. So I think we die, like, right away.
Repel the invaders.
Mother of mud.
Oh, well, there's the unite I wanted.
Keep your distance.
Were you here for the whole thing?